Hey everybody, this is Charlene O'Hanlon. Welcome to another episode of TechStrong TV. Today is Tuesday, February 23rd. Just another groovy Tuesday. We have an amazing lineup, as we always do on TechStrong TV, but I'm very excited about today's lineup of interviews that we have scheduled for today's show. We're going to actually get things kicked off with a really great conversation between Alan Schimmel and Jacques Decla, who is the CEO of a company called 42 Crunch. They have a discussion about what 42 Crunch is doing to remain a leader in API security. They've got a lot of great stuff going on, and so Jacques and Alan discuss what the company is up to and how they plan to remain a leader in API security. So great conversation there. After that, Alan talks with Jen Miller Osborne, who's the Deputy Director of Threat Intelligence at Unit 42 of Palo Alto Networks. She talks with Alan about the discovery of Bendy Bear APT. Bendy Bear is a particularly nasty malware that's hitting the networks now, and she talks about basically fills us in on what it is and who may be behind it. And it's definitely one worth checking out. We've been hearing a lot about Bendy Bear lately, so Jen fills us in on that, all the information we need to know about it. After the conversation with Jen, Alan talks with Yu Zhu, who is the CEO of TigerGraph. TigerGraph is making waves in the GraphDB market. They just recently raised $100 million in funding. So you and Alan talk about what their funding means for the market and what it means for the GraphDB market specifically. So great stuff there. After that, we have another part two of our two-part Haunted Hacker podcast hosted by Mike Jones. Part one ran yesterday, and today is the continuation of a discussion that Mike has with Alton Johnson, who was the CEO of automated pen testing platform company Vonahi.io. And I'm sure I'm still mispronouncing the name of that company, but it's a great conversation. Mike and Alton have about pen testing and cybersecurity, and just great conversation all the way around. After that, in our Something Old segment, we have another one of the many fascinating presentations from the recent Predict 2021 virtual summit. This one is from Kaniz Mahdi, who is the Vice President of Advanced Technologies at VMware. She talks about 5G predictions post-COVID-19. We've been hearing a lot about 5G over the last, I would say at least a year. And since COVID-19, I think actually a lot of people have kind of hitched their hopes and dreams on 5G. And as the world adapts to new priorities following COVID-19, not that it's over by any stretch of the imagination, but 5G is actually kind of forcing many industries to kind of herald new business models and applications and services that will serve as the foundation for what is being termed as the fourth industrial revolution. So Kaniz addresses some of the opportunities caused by the shift in adoption of 5G technologies and what this means for organizations, and especially in the enhanced mobile broadband and industrial applications. Those two areas specifically are being influenced dramatically by 5G. And she's going to be talking about what they mean for the industry in various ways. So fascinating presentation. Definitely one worth checking out. After Kaniz, after her presentation, I come back and I've got the news headlines for you, as I always do. And then I have a conversation with Chris Hickman, who is the Chief Security Officer for Keyfactor. We talk about the effectiveness of SSH certificates or SSH keys in multi-cloud environments. If you know about SSH, then you know it's a great authentication tool for a number of environments, especially remote and distributed working environments. But managing them can be super difficult. So Chris and I talk about how to kind of quell that chaos that lingers in IT environments, especially in light of the pandemic and so many organizations working remotely these days, and how SSH can remain an effective authentication method. So great conversation that we have. After that, I talk with LaChristian Taylor, who is the chief security. No, I'm sorry, she's not. She's head of executive operations at Exabeam. I had a conversation with her as part of our celebration of Black History Month, and she and I talk about diversity and inclusion in IT and most specifically cybersecurity. LaChristian and I have a great, very candid conversation about what's happening with diversity in the cybersecurity space, what she's seen since she started with Exabeam, what they're doing at the company to promote diversity and inclusion. And, in the many ways, I think that Exabeam can really be kind of a poster child, if you will, for diversity and inclusion. And so LaChristian and I talk about those things. And, I would say that if Exabeam is any indication, we're on the right track for diversity and inclusion in IT. So after that conversation with LaChristian, I talked to you guys about the webinars preview, as I always do, telling you about some of the new webinars that are coming up that I think you guys might be interested in checking out. And so hopefully you can mark your calendars. After that, Mitch Ashley comes on with his regular Analyst Corner segment. In this episode, he examines more fully what digital transformation means and what are the 3 stages of value that companies should seek in their initiatives. It's a really interesting topic of discussion. He also shares some of his thoughts on activities that are currently underway that can be often transitional and not the end state, and how to avoid the shiny object syndrome that so many of us these days are guilty of, including myself. I will be the first one to admit that. All right, after Mitch's conversation, Mike Vizard comes on with his The View from Vizard segment, and he talks with Strata CEO Eric Olden, and he explains how $11 million in additional funding for the company will help it to take identity management to the next level. So great conversation that Mike and Eric have regarding identity management and what Strata has in store in that space. So great lineup of conversations today. I hope you can join me for one or all of them, and we will get things kicked off right after this commercial message. All right, welcome back. Kicking us off today is a conversation between Alan Schimmel and Jacques Declas, who is CEO of 42Crunch, talking about API security and what the company's doing. So let's give it a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, this is Alan Schimmel, and welcome to another segment here on TechStrong TV. My guest this segment is Jacques Declas. Jacques is the CEO over at 42Crunch, and first let's welcome Jacques. Jacques, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Thank you, Alan. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. Where are you joining us from today?
I'm actually in London, based here, and been so for quite some time with the COVID, I'm afraid.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all? Well, I hear things are getting a little better in London, though. Maybe I hope so. We'll see where that goes. Jacques, we've covered 42Crunch as we were talking off camera. I think the first time we covered 42Crunch is we ran into you folks at the RSA APJ event. Not this past year, because obviously that was virtual, but the year before. So that would be 2019.
That's right.
And did some interviews there. And we've been covering 42Crunch since. I think we had Dimitri on a couple months ago, but for our audience maybe who's not familiar with 42 Crunch, why don't you give us a little background?
Sure. Thank you, Alan. Basically, 42 Crunch, we're a SaaS API security platform. The main requirements for us is to try to secure all those APIs that have been mushrooming around the world. And we tackle this by injecting security into the DevOps process so that we can tackle that problem at scale is the best way to resume what we do. Yeah.
Excellent. And of course, the API security issue is one that, honestly, when I first met you 2 years ago or so, I mean, I'd heard of it, but I didn't know how big it was. But it's something that is really, really becoming big as more and more folks are relying on APIs to stitch together all of these apps and components and stuff that they use. And now, API security has become so tightly kind of ingrained with AppSec and with DevSecOps and stuff like that. So, it's gone mainstream, as they say. Jacques, and with that, though, 42 Crunch has certainly been both a leader and a benefactor of this movement around API security. And you guys recently announced some news around that. Why don't you share?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exciting news. I can't share too many numbers because we're a private company, but I can say we've raised a lot of money. I think there's some in the public domain from an interesting venture capitalist fund called Adara, and there's more news coming on the funding side. Merely to tackle the growth of the company, we're seeing a lot of inbound demand from all around the world, especially large enterprises who are struggling to keep up with their API security. As you know, API have been mushrooming so quickly around those companies. And yes, it's exciting news. We've had 900% increase on our revenue last year for 2020, and we're fueling the demand for us to be able to sell around the world and support all our customers through raising more funding to be able to execute the business plan. The other exciting news is we also seeing the Open Api Specification, which people that are involved in API knows what it is, but it's basically this standard that's growing very, very fast around the world. We didn't hear that. We've been witnessing this huge demand to tackle the problem, who unfortunately a lot of companies are still being breached on a weekly basis. And so it's very exciting news. The market, as you said, this API security market has been sneaking around the corner between the app security world, between the integration space, which API was built at the beginning to integrate any app with any app. But now it's becoming so mainstream that even core applications are being written by API in the banking sector, in the healthcare, government, telco. It's very cross vertical. It's very exciting, and you need specific solution. And I think we're getting a lot of success, if I may say so, especially because we're resolving a 20 or 30-year-old problem in those large enterprises when you only have a small security team of security engineers by 5 or 10 people, but you have an army of developers popping up those APIs every week, and they just can't keep up literally with the sheer volume of those applications. So the fact that we can inject that security with the developers directly at source helps tremendously to scale the job of the security people trying to protect those applications. So it's great news already. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about raising money. Look, crazy as it sounds during these COVID times, a lot of companies raising money. A lot of companies, in a totally remote manner, raising money. But, and until you've raised the money, you don't really realize how hard it is, right? And there's a lot of work. You got to kiss a lot of frogs, all of that good stuff. But from our audience's point of view, they tend to get jaded because we have so many companies on here who are raising money, and sometimes outrageous amounts of money, $100 million plus rounds.
Yeah.
But what our audience wants to know is, what does that mean for them? What are you going to do with that money to kind of help the state of API security?
Yeah, so for us, we are a SaaS business, so we operate all our three main services for your audience. We have a static security audit to audit on the customer all their estate, to start to clean up all these APIs that they have inside the companies. And then the second service is the scan to really find live vulnerability on the actual API. And then the third one is the protection. But what we do with the money is because of the demand we have, and it's really worldwide, we have demand in customers in Asia, in Europe, in the US, but also in South America and the Middle East. It's literally a global issue. So we're going to use a lot of this investment twofold. The first one is on the infrastructure side. We need to spin up our platform for regulatory perspective and confidentiality perspectives in different regions. So not just in the US and Europe, but also in Asia and other parts of the world. We also using a lot on the recruitment on staff, supporting those infrastructure and supporting the customers, onboarding the platform. And also, we're also using a lot of this investment in the go-to-market strategy, because we need local people to, again, support our partners and customers throughout the different regions. So it's a mix of go-to-market strategy and also infrastructure cost and infrastructure support. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Excellent stuff. With COVID, of course, look, anything around digital transformation has been accelerated, expanded,
True.
Right? But specifically API security, what effect has this whole COVID thing had on that?
We're not really too affected in terms of the operation. We a company kind of born on internet, building a SaaS platform. We're very used to work with the Zoom and Teams and remote sort of web technologies. I think there is an impact, though, in terms of the global sort of economic confidence. I think we're still riding that wave of the government around the world financing the effect of COVID, but I think there will be a check back in terms of what companies are prepared to invest in. For us, it's been the opposite. I'm glad to say, in a strange way, the COVID has been instrumental for companies to look more at remote workers, which often use applications which are built on APIs. Security is also very important when you have a very distributed workforce. So for us individually at 42Crunch, we didn't see a big impact for COVID, but we think in terms of allocation of budget, we might see something different. But security is becoming not a nice to have as it used to be in the past, but a must have for those companies.
Absolutely.
So I think it's that's kind of our findings here at 42Crunch. Mm-hmm.
Yep. What about, look, we ran into you first in Singapore, right? So obviously 42Crunch is a company with a global kind of footprint. You're based in London. I'm here in North America. Dimitri, product officer, I think, is he out in the Valley? He's out in the West Coast, I remember.
Yeah, that's right, in California. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I met you in Singapore. So, 42Crunch worldwide. Are there certain regions of the world that are accelerating faster in their need for API security, you think? Or is it pretty kind of uniform?
Yeah, it is uniform, even though we see pockets of speed at which they need to sort out the problem. So, for example, we have a lot of demand in the financial services industry, for example, where things like open banking in the UK is a regulation that the banks have to legally abide by through APIs called open banking APIs. We're seeing the same thing in down in the Southeast Asia and also in the US. So there's sometimes this regulation that sort of forces the company to be able to protect those applications because they have to, and they have to open up. some of their assets to the environment where they're doing business. So we've seen a few things in the healthcare industry as well, where there's a lot of healthcare patient information that needs to be shared now being enforced by government so that it's not a black box anymore for some of those organizations. So that's also all exposed and consumed through APIs. So there's a few areas that we see people that are starting to really tackle the issue with some kind of urgency.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think we see that. I mean, media ops, our audience is global, right? I mean, 38% US, 32% Europe, 15% India, and then the usual suspects: Singapore, Australia. On the APAC side, represented in that group in the top 10 as well. So that I guess is not surprising. Going forward, looking at 2021 now, you've got money in the bank, you're expanding, accelerating. What do you think of the big, not trouble spots, but where's the big innovation going to be coming up?
It's a very interesting question. I'll try to be concise on what we think. We believe that the digitalization has happened so quickly. If you think about it, go back 15 years ago, it was only some of the largest companies that were dipping their toes into digitization. But the whole world understand that there's entire businesses that are run solely on API these days. Literally, think about the insurance industry, for example, is a perfect example. The music industry, where literally the computer system are running the whole sort of company. That has been accelerated, as you say, with the pandemic and COVID. I think in the future, we're seeing a huge raise because of those confidentiality clauses and maybe the geopolitical situation where some countries are trying to maybe be a bit more protective on the data, leaving their boundaries through those API. We might see some more innovation in terms of being able to exchange data without being forcibly visible to the consumer of that data. I think there's going to be quite a lot of technology which is not going back to the old days, but the internet has been so open, so difficult to manage and to control, that we see companies starting to ask very specific solution around maybe confidentiality of integration. So things about new cryptographic type of technology coming so that you can still do business around the world, but the data is much, much more difficult to get access to from anyone. So we see quite a big drive in that way in the next 12 months, we think.
Excellent. Jacques, you know what I realized we didn't mention? Website. Where can people get more information on all of this?
Yeah, so we own 2 properties at 42Crunch. Everyone who wants to find more about the solution, what we do, and also please come to 42crunch.com. People that want to try the product, we've got the application which is right in there, which is the platform.42crunch.com as well. And also for every API developers and DevOps in particular that wants to educate themselves around API security, there's a great website which Dimitri curates called apisecurity.io. This is a free community site when we publish all the breach around the world every week on API and how to protect yourself against those breaches. So there's a lot of really interesting information, and it's not just directed to security engineers, but also to DevOps engineers, so that you can see how they can utilize their tool and our services so that they can start to protect themselves against those. So those are the 2 I will mention. Okay.
Perfect. Jacques, thanks for joining us. I know you're busy and a lot going on there. Thanks for taking the time out. Come back and visit us soon again, okay?
I will for sure, Alan. Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
All right. Best of luck. Congratulations. Jacques Declave, 42Crunch, and Open API. Is it API Security or Open API? What was the site?
It's API. It's a SaaS API security platform. Yeah.
Yep. No, the site that Dimitri maintains.
Oh, apisecurity.io. Yeah.
APIsecurity.io in addition to 42crunch.com.
That's right.
All righty. This is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with our next guest.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, welcome back. Next up, we have a conversation between Alan Schimmel and Jen Miller Osborne, who's the Deputy Director of Threat Intelligence at Unit 42 of Palo Alto Networks. She gives us all the details we need to know about the Bendy Bear APT that has recently come to light and can be a threat definitely worth keeping an eye on. So let's give this one a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on another TechStrong TV segment. My guest for this segment is my friend Jen Miller Osborne from the from Palo Alto Networks, Unit 42, Threat Research and Intelligence. Hey Jen, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I just had a momentary senior moment there and giving your name and the whole name of the company and everything. I apologize, but it came together for me. Anyway, it's great to have you back on the show, though, quite frankly, it's not for a good thing, right? Because when Jennifer's here, that means some malware or something bad in the world is going on that you guys discovered. But I guess it is a good thing because it's better to be discovered than laying undiscovered or running undiscovered. So we'll leave it at that. But as I said off camera, Jennifer, our audience is familiar with Palo Alto Networks. They're familiar with the great work your team is doing over there. Let's jump into it if you don't mind. So you guys put out some news last week. Let's hear about it.
So what we published last week was a malware that we have named Bendy Bear. We called it Bendy Bear because the original parent malware was called Water Bear, which was discovered by another research group. So Bear thing we didn't start it. We just kept on with the family name. Okay. And one of the reasons we get a little flack for using a bear, but one of the reasons we really published this, and we've been trying to make quite an effort to get the word out widely, is because this is one of the stealthiest pieces of shellcode that we've ever run across. Despite its size, which is 10,000 bytes, which is typically large for shellcode, it does so many things to remain under the radar and to keep itself both from being detected by traditional analysis and also to make it difficult for someone to reverse engineer and understand what the capabilities were. So this has been in use since at least 2015, and they've continue to upgrade it over time, which shows that they're continuing to focus on this. This is going to be something. They have very good developers. And we wanted to get this out so customers could be aware, and anyone else that might be targeted by this, that this is very stealthy and it's a stage 0 type attack, which means the only thing this is capable of is downloading malwares, downloading additional files. And that makes it particularly dangerous because it's so easy for it to remain under the radar, and then it can pull down additional malware, and we can only assess that the malware would likely be as good, if not better, than the shellcode that's pulling it down. So we really wanted to get the word out to get as many people aware of this and protect it as we can.
Absolutely, sounds pretty insidious. Any idea how the injection of the shellcode is made? Is it via clicking on a bad link? Is it included in an email? I mean, what? Any idea?
We don't know. We were not able to recover whatever the dropper was that actually installed this. Our analyst had reversed this. He actually had to build a custom one just to be able to conduct analysis of the shellcode to get it to work.
Really?
Yep.
Any idea how long this has been out in the wild?
This particular variant, this particular family, not this variant, the earliest one we've seen to date is 2015. The earliest of the parent family was reported on circa 2009. So they've been in development for quite some time. Yes.
Yep. And the genealogy, if you will, of these types of attacks is it's not unusual to have something that's been around for 10 years like that. But of course, evolution, Darwinism, and all that good stuff. What we see today is much more usually sophisticated and refined than maybe what was done back in 10 years ago or more like that. Sounds like this might be the case here as well.
This is definitely an indicator for a more technical and advanced group. You don't typically see this level of development resources in time. There's not that many groups that we're aware of or that have been talked about that have this kind of funding and talent behind them, basically, where they can create custom shellcode and malware like this.
Yeah. So to me, that sort of points to a potential nation state actor here.
The general consensus of the research community has been that this is likely has a Chinese origin, and the Taiwanese Department of Justice actually posted about a month or so ago. It was actually part of how we found the sample. They listed a number of the C2s as being related to Chinese state-sponsored activity, and that's one of the C2s that we found Bendy Bear using. So we have no reason to disagree with everyone's assessment.
I get it. I mean, yeah, and we have a worldwide community now for these kinds of things, and when they reach a consensus, there's usually a good reason why that consensus is reached, right? So we'll leave it at that. Let's talk about the kind of malware. So once this thing is installed, it's laying low. It's a shell script. It's not an app laying around there. It's it probably has an innocuous file name or something like that's installed, and then how does it get sort of activated, and what kind of malwares have you been able to see this thing pull, or we don't know?
We don't know. That's actually something we would love to hear from anyone else in the community, that and if they're aware of how this is dropped, because we assess it's probably going to have a similar level or potentially a similar level of sophistication as the shellcode. The only thing this shellcode does is beacons back to its C2 and essentially waits for the C2 to send it another program to download. That's its only functionality. What makes it so interesting is the effort they went to have this remain under the radar. So not only does the shellcode only run in memory, but when it loads any files it downloads, those will also only run in memory, which makes it very difficult to detect because there's nothing that actually gets written to the drive. The C2 communications, they did a custom version of RC4 encryption, and then they chunk it. And then they also use port 443 to make it look like SSL encryption, making it hard to pick this traffic out from among others. And then if you find it, it's also difficult to decrypt in addition because they change session keys every time they send back and forth. So that's another component that makes it difficult to find. It also changes its runtime footprint every time it executes. So it's just gobbledygook that would be left for a forensic person or anyone looking through the kind of hard drive or logs to find. It hides, it uses a static Windows registry key for its configuration data. So that's another area where it's hiding where you might expect to see things or you wouldn't necessarily go poking around and looking for something malicious. So they spent quite a bit of time making sure that for all of this, the only functionality the shellcode has is to download other things. The authors of it spent a lot of time ensuring that it won't be found and to make it incredibly difficult to detect. There's very few things that you can find that allow for the typical kind of static or network analysis or even signaturing that is commonplace with the way a lot of protections are built.
Unbelievable kind of stuff in there, huh? Let me ask you a question. So let's say it's running, and when it's running, as you say, it's resident in memory, not on disk. So if you run a scan of your disk, it's obviously not showing up. If you run a scan of active memory, it won't show up either there, or what kind?
Hides
what
itself
is it
to look like legitimate Windows processes. So
It
that's
does.
another thing where it tries to make sure that it doesn't look, and it changes what it uses every time. So there's also nothing statically to look at from that perspective where it's always going to be the same one. But it does
Yep.
make sure it looks like it belongs.
I gotcha. And then sounds like it's a Windows only thing then, not a Mac, not effects.
Yes.
No effect
At least
on Mac.
at least what we have is specific for Windows.
Well, this version of it, right? Just crazy stuff. So let's talk about this now. So you guys come across this, you're putting the word out there, you're looking for help, feedback, additional info from the community at large, and that means you, if you're watching this at home and there's anything you could add to the Jen's team's research here would be great. But what's next steps for you guys with this now?
At this point, we've done as much as we can with this particular family. We've shared it as widely as we can. We did a lot of outreach prior to publishing this because it was so stealthy. So we wanted to give as many of our partners a chance to have protections in place and awareness before it became public knowledge. And we will continue to follow this. We are still actively looking into it. We would love to find some more components of this attack. So again, if anyone out there is familiar with this or has some things to add, please feel free to reach out to us. We would love to talk to you.
Absolutely. I mean, that just crazy stuff. I hate hearing stuff like this, Jennifer. You have no idea. It makes me, because it is what it is, and it's the world we kind of live in with this. What about the C2 though? Can we do anything to trace back to that and try to take that down, or is it?
For this particular one, you wouldn't necessarily have been able to do a takedown on it. And they're, at this point, as far as we know, most of these don't seem to be active, and they're also not conducive to that. You'd need to go for some law enforcement action and some things like that. And by the time that kind of paperwork is put together and served,
long gone.
Yeah. That's the C2 component of any of these is the easiest part to change.
Yeah. They're almost like tracking portable missile launchers, right?
I hope this is a little less dangerous.
Yeah, me too. That's the kind of mood I'm in. I spent a year in the house with COVID. Give me a break.
Totally understand.
Yeah. Anyway, hey Jennifer, I want to thank you for coming on and cluing our audience in on this. What else is happening any other news over at the unit you want to share? Or?
Everything as usual. We'll have some more reporting that you might be interested in, I'm sure, here soon, because it never stops. I love my job because it's fun and things always change, but that's also the hard part.
This is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah.
Anyway, not to be keep up the great work. I don't want to be a downer on the great work you guys do, because if it wasn't for you and those like you and Unit 42 and other, threat research, we wouldn't even know about these things. Right. And we'd still be, victim and the wheels of justice grind slowly sometimes, but they do grind. And so keep up the great work and tell the rest of the team and come back and join us soon.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's always really nice to talk to you.
Yep. All right. Jen Miller Osborne, Unit 42, Palo Alto Threat Research Team here on TechStrong TV about Bendy Bear, right? I got that right?
Yep.
Okay. This is Alan Schimmel. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with another guest.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
All right, welcome back. We now have a conversation between Alan Schimmel and Yu Zhu, who is the CEO of TigerGraph, talking about TigerGraph's most recent $100 million funding and what it is doing in the GraphDB market. So great conversation. Let's give it a look.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on another TechStrong TV interview here. For this segment, I'm happy to be joined by Yu Zhu. Yu is the CEO founder of TigerGraph, and I think this is his first time on our show, so let's welcome him. Yu, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Thank you, and good afternoon.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to have you here. So Yu, so I've known about TigerGraph for a while now, but I don't know if everyone in our audience has. So if you don't mind, why don't you give our audience a little bit of a background on TigerGraph, what you guys do, and you're the founder, CEO, maybe a little bit of your background and how you came to found the company.
Sure. Thanks for having me. My background is in database and the distributed system. I got the PhD in database from the University of California, San Diego. After my graduation, I joined Teradata, the leading enterprise data warehousing company. I worked there for a little over 5 years, then moved up from San Diego to San Francisco to join Twitter. I left Twitter in 2011. Pre-IPO, before Twitter went to IPO, and I started the TigerGraph. That's my background. And TigerGraph, we provide the best distributed graph database to help our customer to connect and analyze the data so they can get new insights which are impossible previously with other technology.
Yeah. Excellent. And part of this whole GraphDB and everything, people are, I think most people know about it. I mean, we've seen, look, from when I was doing databases 25 years ago, and it was either object-orientated, relational, non-relational. Databases today, we have time series database, we have many different ways of storing data because we have so much more data to store. So let's talk about that. What type of data, what kind of uses would people use TigerGraph for?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mentioned I'm a database guy. I have been doing research around the relational database and the semi-structured database for many years. I have so many friends, co-workers working in IBM, Oracle, Teradata, Microsoft, database groups, right? So that's what I only know about database. So back to your question, graph database is really unique because mathematically speaking, it has the most power. For example, any question, any problem you can describe in SQL using relational database, you can equivalently solve them in a graph database. But the other way is not true. For example, think about the PageRank, the famous PageRank from Google, right? Think about the customer community detection, think about like shortest path, think about like network flow optimization. These are all native graph algorithms. Most of the time, they are like unsupervised machine learning algorithms. So you cannot even describe those problems using SQL. You cannot solve them at all using relational database, right? But on the other hand, if you look at the document database, key value database, that's more scalable, more user friendly to use, but the power is actually less than relational database. Relational SQL is so powerful, you can write really complex SQL queries to solve some advanced problems. But traditional relational base is limited in scalability and flexibility, especially for bigger data sets. So graph database in the past has been a niche market because nobody solved the problem of how to do a distributed graph database. So that's why a lot of people really love the concept of graph database. They really think their problems are best to be modeled as graph problem, but they don't have commercial enterprise level graph database to help them, right? So if you look at our customers, some are the largest financial banks in the whole world, right? In fact, we have seven of the 10 largest financial companies using TechGraph right now. Their problems are not new, right? Either anti-money laundering, or it's fraud detection, or it's best customer, service. Those problems are not new. They have some of the best teams in machine learning and AI. They have been doing this machine learning, for many, many years. But they still need a TechGraph to help them to connect the data, so they can improve the data model much better than any other technology. So back to your question, Graph is really unique because it's more powerful, it's more flexible. Also, if you think about the business problem in the last 40 years, people always want to connect data, get new insights, but they always are using rows, columns, right? Using relational base or other type of databases. But the graph is really a new type of way for them to connect the dots more efficiently, more quickly, and do things previously they cannot do at all.
Very good. You are excellent. And the other thing I wanted to mention to our audience, maybe who may or may not be familiar with graph databases, is, like many databases or types of databases, there's open source graph databases, and there's commercial versions like a Tiger Graph. So it really represents a good on-ramp, right, for people who want to experiment, who want to try this and see the power of it, right? It's a great community behind this that's working on it.
Yeah, that's really a critical question. From the experience we have working with some of the best customers in the world, we found that the customer really care about open access. For example, our core database is not open source. We build them from the ground up using C++, so we can optimize memory, compression, CPU, everything dedicated for graph problems, right? But our core language is open, so we have a lot of customers. They just build the application all by themselves. We don't know anything or know very little about what they are doing. So they can completely do everything all by themselves. Also, another thing is that our language is so powerful. We open source all of the traditional graph algorithms, like PageRank, community detection, so the customer can use them out of the box, or they can change them. It's open text, right? So also we provide for life free enterprise edition up to some data set limitation. On the cloud, we also provide free ETLs. Even the machine is free, provided by TechGraph for customer to use. Again, with some limitation on the capability of the machines. And if you look at Snowflake is not an open source company, but they're still, going really strong, right? Still, it's a huge company already. So I think especially enterprise customers, they really care about the more open access. They really care about customer support. A lot of customers choose us, number one, because we have the best product. They choose us because only TechGraph can solve their problems. But number two, they really, because we give them the best support. If there's any issue, they can hold the TechGraph accountable, which is really important for business users.
Absolutely. And this is, look, I've been in technology 30 years, right? And this is the beauty of today's open source, open languages, open access type of communities, in that, it used to be either you were all open source and the only thing you sold was support or training. And then we went through open core and all of these different, models. But today we have many companies like a TigerGraph who, the core product, no pun intended, the core product is maybe not open source, but the language is open. It allows people to innovate. It gives them what they need in that openness. They're not there necessarily to, look, 92 or 96% of the users never get to source code or make a change to that anyway. But right. So and so that's the beauty of it today, where you can have all of these members in the community that, some open source, some not, but they're all working towards a common kind of problem solving.
Yeah, exactly. And also one thing I want to mention is that the ISO International Committee is going to release a new query language that is for Graph called the GQL, Graph language. Yeah, so the goal is so that the customer have no worries about vendor lock-in, right? So even the developers, you don't have to choose this language from this vendor. For OEM software vendors, they can build connectors, they can build visualization tools based on this single unified international query language, right? So this gives customers more confidence. Yeah, they really care about the building the application. They really care about the building machine learning AI applications on top of Graph. They don't really care about, how the code was written, right? They really care about, do you have the performance? Do you have the scalability? Do you have, the developers they can hire to build applications? With this ISO GQL language, this is going to be a huge milestone for everyone in the Graph space. Also, I want to point out that ISO standardized the SQL about 40 years ago. ANSI SQL started first, then ISO standardized it, make it an international query language standard, right? So Graph GQL is going to be the second query language for data management in 40 years for my ISO.
Interesting. Very cool. Very good. So I wanted to focus in on TigerGraph a little bit. You guys recently announced some really big news. I don't want to steal the thunder. You tell our audience what was the news.
Yeah, we closed our Series C funding. We reached the $105 million. It's led by Tiger Global, and it's the largest funding round to this date in the Graph database and the analytics space.
That's beautiful. Congratulations. Congratulations. And $105 million raise it puts TigerGraph in a unicorn kind of club, if you will, right?
We don't disclose valuation or financial information, as we are privately held company.
Right. Got it. Well, congratulations. Though, in my years, I've had to raise money several times, and it's not the easiest thing in the world. And raising that kind of money is not an easy thing, right? It means a lot of people had a lot of confidence into what you're doing, and it's a real, more than the dollar amount aside, it's a real validation of what you're doing and what you're building. And so congratulations on that. You're welcome. As we were talking off camera, our audience is a fairly technical audience. We hear companies raising money all the time, even in COVID where you can't meet in person and everything, but they're still raising money, and they say, great, what does it mean for them? What does this money for TigerGraph mean for our audience, for the Graph database users out there? What can they expect from TigerGraph as a result of this?
That's a great question. I think this is really a big testimonial to how big the Graph space is going to be. So it shows the confidence in this Graph marketplace, especially also in Tiger Graph itself, right? I think I mentioned the key motivation for business is to really connect the data and get the insights so they can do more, sense for their customers, right? So they can get more ROI for their business. In the past 40 years, if you think about it, relational database has always been the king, right? But if you think about the technology evolution, it's hard to imagine a technology 40 years old is still going to be, the king for everything, right? So that's why you are seeing different type of databases growing in the last 20 years. As I mentioned earlier, Graph database is really the most powerful type of databases. But before Tiger Graph, nobody, was able to develop a commercial quality distributed graph database. Now we made it happen. It's trusted by our customers. Actually, our customers are growing their business with the Tiger Graph every year in the last 3 years. So, and what this means to the people who are, more on the technology side, I think number one, because the GQL, more and more applications are going to be built on top of graph databases. Yeah. I would even venture to say Graph is going to be the new Java. If you think about the Java language versus COBOL before, right? So a lot of people migrate away, to Java, other language. COBOL applications still run, continue to run, right? But you're just not going to build new application on top of new systems, right? So I think a Graph is going to be more popular down the road. More and more developers, companies are going to build new applications, especially machine learning and AI applications are going to be built on top of Graph. And then, it's going to be new international query language, right? So I think this is going to be exciting to a lot of technical people. I'm tech guy, so I'm personally interested in every new language, right? Whether it's Python or it's Scala or, in the older times it was Ruby, I always, curious about the new language. Now, if you look at the GQL, it's going to be international standard. It's going to be so powerful to build the different type of applications. I think that this means a lot to people on the technology side. Even on the business side, we have a lot of champions from the customer side. They're not a techie, but immediately they got it, right? They know how Graph can help them. For example, United Health Group, they build the largest healthcare graph on top of Tiger Graph. They connect more than 100 data sources, so they can provide a real-time care path for their 50 million patients, right? So they use us on a daily basis. They have more than 10,000 of service representatives on their call center, right? So they use Tiger Graph to answer the questions more intelligently, more quickly, provide a much better customer experience to reduce the customer cost and also improve the quality for the patient. So I think, Graph development is not just an exciting thing for technical people, but also for a lot of business guys. And I also want to mention, if you look at the Tableau, if you look at the Microsoft Power BI, ClickView, this type of BI tools, the market is even larger than relational database because more people are powered with the capability to access data, right? You don't need even to write an SQL query. You don't need to write SQL queries, right? But you can just use the UI to get the insights. So before Tiger Graph, there was no powerful database in the graph space. So basically, there was no good Graph BI, Graph UI product. Now with Tiger Graph, we actually released our first Graph BI toolkit called a Visual Query Builder. Think about it, it's like Tableau for Graph database. So we are going to spend more resources to add more functionality to our Visual Query Builder so that first-time business users can also use browser, right, to drag and drop, to ask questions visually. For example, you just through drag and drop, you create like a tree pattern or create a graph pattern. For example, you can ask a question like this: who graduated from this university, moved to this city, joined this company, and has a friend who comes from another university in a different city, right? Think about this: it's a tree or it's a small graph, right? You can just draw this. What you draw is what you're going to get. Tiger Graph automatically generates a SQL query for you and give you back the result in real time. So this means a lot of people, they don't even need to spend time to learn a new graph query language. And then immediately get the business value, right? You could be a developer, also be a business guy.
Sure. So we're almost out of time. You know what I realized we never even touched on? What about for people who want to get information? Where do they go?
Oh, we have a lot of information on our website. We last year, a couple months ago, we won an award from Forbes Wave report. It ranked the Tiger Graph as one of the top leader, and we got the full score, the best score for community development. So on our website, we have custom use cases. We have a lot of technical documentation for developers. We also have a cloud offering with more than 20 plus starter kits. So it's pre-built graph schema with pre-built graph queries with pre-built this example data set. So it's really, actually, if you go to our Tiger Graph cloud sign up, it takes a few minutes to get up and running and have a graph, at your fingertip. You can drop and drag, create the queries. You can double click to collapse and expand the graph to get the idea.
So the URL is tigergraph.com.
Yeah.
Tigergraph.com. And you can get to all of it off of there.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. Again, congratulations. What a great accomplishment. But more than, as we said, more than the money, congratulations on building a really great company and really making, the possibility of graph databases, the power of graph databases available, to people who and once you know how the technology works. Once we set it out there, then people's minds get it. How can I use it? And they come up with more and more uses that maybe even you thought of, and great things happen.
Exactly. Our customers are so innovative, right? For example, some customers are using us for blockchain analytics, and which was completely new to us. We're not domain in blockchain or other domain, right? We have customer building, all kinds of new applications. Some are in the power grid, right? So they can reduce the power outage. So which was also new to us because we saw this kind of old traditional vertical, right? They should have everything figured out, but turns out the graph can really help them get into the next stage. So that's one really exciting part of doing database, doing your infrastructure company. You are really not just building one application. You're not just getting money from advertising or something like that. You're actually working with so many innovative companies. Some are bigger companies.
You can't even know more.
Yeah.
Right. It's infinite, literally. Anyway, we've got to go. Yushu, thank you. Thank you for being with us here on TechStrong TV. Come back and visit us again. Keep us up to date on what's going on at TigerGraph.
Great. Thank you so much. Really nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
All right. Yushu from TigerGraph here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Schimmel. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with our next guest.
The security landscape is evolving rapidly in the face of disruption. Growing cyber threats, a global pandemic, and other factors have irrevocably changed the way organizations view and adopt security technologies. Cybersecurity 2021, the new normal, will bring together thought leaders, security experts, and IT professionals in the new security landscape and what's ahead in the years to come. On topics ranging from ransomware to DevSecOps, from speakers including Chen-Zi Wang of Rain Capital, Richard Steenan of IT Harvest, and Ira Winkler of Secure Mentum. Visit MediaOps.com/cybersecurity2021 to register.
All right, next up, we've got the Haunted Hacker podcast. This is part 2 of a conversation that Mike Jones has with Alton Johnson, CEO of Vonahi.io, which is an automated pen testing platform. Great conversation about pen testing and cybersecurity. So let's give it a look.
Yeah. So today we have the accessibility to be able to collect resources to get to where we want to be and to be able to help us start our career, such as Hack the Box, Udemy, Mentor Dojo, LinkedIn, etc. So how was it for you growing up? How was you able to pull the resources, find guidance, and get information to get to where you are?
Yeah, so I think one good thing that worked out in my favor is, so my first cybersecurity company that I worked for full time, I actually applied there 3 years in a row. I would not let them get away with an open position without me reaching out. I literally was applying back to, I think they probably hired me because they got tired of me like applying. They were just like, you know what, let's just give this guy a chance. He's constantly emailing me. And so I started off just doing like basic help desks, like basic support. So at the time we had virtual machines that clients downloaded to deploy. And
what age was that when you started that job?
That was I think 20. Yeah, I was 20. Okay. And so basically we were, I was just doing basic stuff, helping the customers get their VMs deployed. And every time, like I talked to the analyst, I was like, hey, whenever you guys are doing a pen test, let me, I want to be right there when you do a pen test, right? Okay. And so every time they had a pen test, every time something good came up, they would, bring me over there, and I would literally start studying everything they're doing. And when I went home, I was just like researching, and that was a rinse and repeat situation for like, a good 6 months before they had an opening in an analyst role, and I jumped straight in there.
That's passion right there.
Yeah, research. I try to stress to people too is that research is so important. Right. This is not a 9-to-5 job. You don't go in and sit behind a desk, and you're proficient just by showing up to work. Like it takes outside research, outside reading, experimentation. I mean, it has to be a way of life. It has to be a passion, or else you're not going to be the top echelon. If you're okay, like, and being complacent with just being an analyst and just doing the bare minimum, that's what you'll get out of it. But for me, and I'm sure for the rest of people, here is it's a passion, and that passion is 24/7. Exactly. I'll wake up in the middle of the night and think about, I wonder if I can add that to an APK or and then I've got to go check it out. I've got to get up and actually do something.
That was me 2 nights ago. I woke up at 2:00 in the morning and I didn't go back to sleep. I was just up coding all night.
Yep. Definitely been there. Cham, any more questions for Alton?
Well, I've got questions for Trami, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So Trami, what did you do before, and what interested you to work for Vonahai?
Yeah, so I've always been into tech, right? So my first job in college, I was working at the Center for Computation and Technology at Louisiana State University. And I was just a webmaster there. So I did all the marketing and the website. And at that place, this was back in 2003, 2004. And they were doing web conferences like we were doing today. So at that time, I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And they're doing all these like awesome technology. They had this, they were using this tool that would measure the gravitational pull and detect it in space so that they can analyze the data. And at that moment, I was already like a nerd about outer space. And so when I learned about all this stuff, I was like, technology is amazing. So I've always been, that was the moment that I was like, okay, whatever it is I do in life, I want to stay close to technology and see where it goes. And then I worked for an advertising company and I built a mobile app. So I got to, do app development. And then that was kind of like my front door to get a taste of like what it was like to work with developers and IT. And it kind of just spitfired from there. And then, my brother and Alton actually are friends outside of, the
that's
internet.
The connection. Gotcha.
So yes, which is important because this is the point I want to bring. You never know where your connections will take you. True. So I was like, in my mid-20s, and my brother's like, hey, I have a friend. He's a really cool hacker, but he also does photography. He needs a logo. Can you help him with a logo?
That's how it all starts. That's how it all starts.
And it's my younger brother asking me for a favor. So I'm like, if it's your friend, I'll do it for free. I won't even charge him. So I hooked Alton up with a logo for his photography business. And then, we stayed in touch, it was like every now and then if he needed a graphics or or some kind of like logo, he'd be like, hey, Trami, can you help me out with this? So we stayed in touch during the years. And then 7 years later, Alton's like, hey, I'm starting my own company. Can you help me with a social media post? So I started out with social media. Then he's like, can you help me build my website? Then I helped him build his website.
Sounds familiar.
This is how I get sucked in. And so it was the website. And then after that, it was like, hey, do you want to just come do marketing for us? And then I was like, yes, I do. Because I've already known Alton for 7 years, and I just knew he was such a phenomenal hacker. And it was because of that passion that, like, he's just so happy when he talks about hacking, you know, like I've never seen anyone so happy to talk about their day job, you know, and it's the same with Mike and everyone in this podcast. I talk to everyone here and they just, you guys like freaking love it, you know, like it's Saturday and here we are. So yeah, I think that networking is so key because I didn't know my connection with Alton would take me here, but I'm so glad it did. And it started 7 years ago with just a simple logo for something that had nothing to do with cybersecurity. But I'm so glad I ended up here because I'm here with you guys today and I love this community so much. So yeah.
That's a great story. Thank you.
And just to piggyback off of that, so this is crazy. Like, you know, because, you know, when I was younger, I didn't really like understand the importance of connections, right? I was 19 years old, 20 years old. I was trying to get into cybersecurity. I didn't really care, like, well, I mean, this is back then, so I could say it now, but I didn't really care about building relationships with clients. I just wanted to hack. I didn't care really because I was, you know, just trying to increase my skills. But over time, you know, I really realized how important, you know, connections were. It's funny because like Trami's brother, like we had connected over the internet, like just, I think it was like, I don't know if it was AIM or whatever the case was back then. And we didn't actually meet for like 5 years, but we had this super close like relationship, like bond, like me and her brother, we're like brothers, you know, without ever knowing each other. Sure. But it turns out, you know, his sister was Trami, and yeah, it's just like the connections, and you just, like you say, you just never know, you know.
That's cool.
So,
yeah, it definitely sounds very familiar.
I know. I feel like you guys are all my brothers and sisters on here for sure.
That's funny. I think we got connected through Drake. So Drake approached me when I got back to the States, and you know, sending me stickers and equipment and stuff. And he's like, yeah, you know, here's some stickers from this company I know. And I was like, I gotta check out this website. So I went and checked it out. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So yeah, like definitely the graphic design is superb for everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So with that being said, any more questions from the people online other than the five of us? So favorite tool to use, and this is for me, favorite tool to use and why on a pen test?
I hate to say it, but just responders in the middle six, you know, it's like, I know they're very basic tools, right? But they're so effective. Like, and we work with a lot of like, you know, MSPs, and a lot of their clients are small. They've never done a pen test, right? Even some of the largest clients with 70,000 systems, they still haven't figured this problem out, right? So you go on, you get on, I keep saying on site, you get on the network and you fire up these tools. And I mean, it's crazy that things like this still work as effectively as they do. Yeah,
that's why some people ask me, you know, why are you still using that exploit? And I'm like, because it still works.
Yeah,
you know, I'm not going to abandon it and rewrite it if it's already, you know, knocking the wheels off of every car. You know,
right? Exactly.
So yeah, exactly. a lot of the tools have been around for forever, like Nikto and some of the other like web scanning tools. Like, they're fundamentally sound, and we still use them today. Nmap,
exactly.
You know, Nmap is
Nmap.
The Hacker's Toolkit was, I believe that it got its cameo appearance in a U.S. military installation where I used to work on the East Coast. They actually had it up on the screen when they went in and did like photo shoots and stuff. It was crazy. So along with that, here's another question. Is there much scope for also offering remediation as part of the product, e.g. identifying a missing patch and then hooking into other tools to apply the patch, the registry key, et cetera, to find and fix? So from my point of view, as a pen tester, I don't like to identify the vulnerability, exploit it, and then be responsible for helping fix it. Because then that takes out that third party unbiased look at it, because now you've put your hand into the security lifecycle and become part of the responsibility. As a pen tester, I like to keep that separated and just strictly show the raw data. Alton, same?
Yeah, same way too. Like, and don't get me wrong, I know how to fix a lot of these things, but a lot of customers have different types of network environments and different scenarios. Right. And so I don't want to become the IT guy. Like if, we say, hey, this is how Microsoft recommends you fix it, but then you fix it and something breaks. It's like, well, I don't manage your network. So it's so hard for me. Like we can, give some advice on what you should probably look into, but yeah.
And we do that too. Like reporting, that's a big part of reporting as well, is putting in suggestions for remediation.
Exactly.
I know with the military and government, when I worked at USJFCom, when we got a patch from Microsoft on Tuesday, it didn't get applied on government assets for another week or two. If it was critical, we had 30 days. And they would put that patch through testing in the lab just to make sure that when they deployed it, the Admiral's still going to have connectivity over the Atlantic Ocean. So those types of mitigations don't always occur right away. And I know in a bank, we had a 30, 60, 90 rule, right? So 30-day for critical, 60 for medium, and a low is 90 days. And they had to be remediated. So, I mean, there's, like you said, for different companies, there's different restrictions and there's different ways that they actually test patches and deploy them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So,
exactly.
I got a question about, okay, so I know you took an untraditional route in terms of education, right? So tell me, like, I know you started hacking at 11, and then tell me about high school, college, and all that stuff, because it was definitely an untraditional education route, right?
Definitely. Yeah. So for me, like high school was boring. It's funny because like today, when a kid says that, you're like, oh, this guy must be a genius. But you said that 10 years ago, like, you said that 10 years ago, they were like, you need this in order to make it in life. So basically for me, I was bored of school, always came home and, hack, play WoW, whatever the case is. And I actually got my GED, right? So I got so tired of school. And then plus I went through Hurricane Katrina.
So for those that are not in the US, can you kind of explain what the GED is?
Yeah, it's like an alternative high school diploma equivalent. So
it's testing out.
Exactly. And so, a while back, I would say that a lot of companies kind of look down at it because you took the shortcut to get out. But I think nowadays, we realize that, the diploma and the degree doesn't mean you're smart all the time, right? That just kind of varies on many different things. So for me, I had been through Hurricane Katrina, which I don't know if everyone knows, but I'm from New Orleans, and, Hurricane Katrina, like we all relocated all over the place, Texas, Atlanta, Mississippi. And I went to 4 different high schools in like 2 years. Wow. And I don't know how it works now, but back then when you went to different school in the middle of the year, you get a whole bunch of paperwork. You have to catch up on that and do all this homework to catch up with the class. And I was just like, I just want to hack. I just want to learn what's going to teach me how to get into a cybersecurity job. I don't care enough to learn about history at 6 o'clock in the morning.
And how old were you at this point?
I was 16.
16. Okay.
Nice.
So I never forget that conversation because I'm the only person in my family that went that way. My mom was just like, I think she knew that she kind of trusted me. And so we had a conversation of, if you're going to get a GED, you got to go to school or work afterwards. Mm-hmm. So I went to Louisiana Technical College right afterwards. I was 16 in the class with a bunch of adults, and I was like the little baby.
So you were 16 in college when you got into college. You were 16. That's crazy.
I was like the baby taking my A+ and Network Plus at the time.
Wow.
And when I finished 2 years later, I started working at I think I was actually working at LSU in an IT help desk position. It was for like students, but I was at a different school than LSU, so they still let me in. And I went from LSU to working at a federal credit union, managing a network. And then we hired a cybersecurity company to come in there and do assessment, who do a lot of assessments for credit unions and banks. And then I transitioned to cybersecurity from there.
How did you get that first InfoSec job?
Yeah, so I applied at the company 3 years in a row. I think the second year they they tried to offer me a position as a junior network administrator, and I was just getting ready to like finish up in school, and I didn't want to like take the leap already, and kind of like, I don't know, it was kind of intimidating. But the third year when they had an opening, I applied for like the first level support, and I felt like that because I was at a cybersecurity company and had access to like 20 different people who did pen testing, it was just a matter of time until I was right under their belt and trying to figure out exactly what they were doing.
Yeah. So there's a question. D may ask, is it not too late for me to start learning cybersecurity? I'm 50 years old. So D may, I'm 47 and I still learn every day. As technology comes out, I grab that and go. It's never too late to learn. I've seen, especially in junior colleges in Texas, I've seen people in junior colleges as old as like 70, 80 years old, just because they want to learn. Because I come into the same school probably that they do, is that when you stop learning, that's when you start dying. So I focus on that. So I have a question for you, Alton. Biggest failure in pen testing and biggest success?
I think the biggest failure, so when I started doing 1099 work right after I left my last full-time job and was working with a big group of cybersecurity consultants, it was pretty, and I guess this is the biggest failure, but I was used to getting like domain admin, finding like good stuff. That was like a thing. Yeah, MS 067, you had all this other stuff that was just still lingering around. And so I remember when I did my first pen test with one of their clients, they had like 75,000 systems. But we were testing small business units across, the company. And so the other pen testers were used to getting, we were used to breaking in or getting access to the environment, things like that. But for some reason, the first pen test that I did, I was like, is this normal to not get domain admin and stuff like that? And they were like, yeah, we got it in the last couple of years. And so like, I really just like, that hit me hard. I was like, I'm used to winning, So I went back and same thing, started studying and trying to figure out what I was missing. But the thing is, you're learning a lot when you work with other pen testers. Everybody have different methodologies, different tools, different strategies. And it's so helpful to like, just collaborate, The biggest win that I would say is we did a pen test. Well, we had a pen test and a social engineering assessment in scope for a large gas company. And we did the social engineering engagement first. We went on site. We got access to the conference room. We were able to, get a reverse shell coming back out. So we went back to the hotel and we did the internal pen test. From that, got domain admin, found a bunch of like confidential stuff, things that they didn't want us to find, of course. And so when we actually finally went on site to meet the client, we told him that we had access to everything. And he was shocked and just like in a good way, right? Like, not like he wasn't trying to like sue us, nothing like that. Right. But he was just like, wow, that is so impressive that you guys literally took over everything, or could have potentially took over everything based on, social engineering engagement. So that was really, really cool.
Your favorite industry to test, whether it's financial, gaming, casinos, hotels, what's your favorite industry to go do a pen test in?
I would probably say finance, just because I'm used to it. And I kind of understand like how they, try to protect themselves. I understand like some of the controls they put in place. You see a lot of common scenarios with a lot of companies who have to be in compliance versus the ones who don't. So it's very interesting and very challenging for companies that are mature and have to meet PCI and things like that. So it's very interesting to get inside of those scenarios.
Yeah,
through the CDE. And
I think the most lucrative one to get into is probably financial. Along with medical. Medical seems to be pretty lucrative right now. But I think my favorite industry to test is the gaming industry out of Vegas and the different casinos, because you really get to see some wild numbers being transferred between servers. And, that's where I got intimate knowledge on how slot machines worked and the algorithms they used. So yeah, like I learned a lot in the gaming industry. So have you done any kind of like post action forensics or on a pen test? I know this happened to me a couple times. On a pen test, have you ever ran into a position where you have to switch hats from being a pen tester to doing forensics and report a breach that they didn't know that they had, and you've seen traces on a server?
Actually, I want to say this something like this happened recently where we did a pen test and we saw some issues, and then they I didn't investigate it to that extent, but I was able to see that, because of like the circumstances externally, we found access to a bunch of stuff, a bunch of different files lying around. I told the client that, hey, look, this is a pretty easy thing to exploit. And chances are you've probably been compromised by several different dozens of people. It's probably, I didn't tell them this, but I was thinking like it was probably a playground for you hack this network and you're in the group or something. I don't know, but
so I was actually part of a startup in California, and it was a voice over IP company, and there was a service provider. Well, they got compromised. One of their call servers got compromised, and the answer that I got when I told them he'd be disconnected in the sandbox was, "We'll just leave it as a honeypot." I'm like, wow, really? Like an operational server, an ops server with, trunks and legit like data, and you're going to turn into a sandbox, a honeypot? Really? Okay. But I see that quite a bit. And then I had, so when you look at a client, right, what is the wildest response you've ever gotten from a vulnerability? Because I know I was doing one for a hospital on the East Coast, and we found the same credentials being used for massive amounts of servers across their infrastructure. And I went back and it was clear text. The password was clear text, username was clear text. And I said, you kind of have to stop this, find a different way to communicate. And we're like, we're not worried about that because we only have one admin account and they use that password for everything. Mm-hmm. I was like, really? Yes, you share accounts. Like you share admin accounts. It's great. So what's the wildest thing you've ran into and had to explain that it's an actual vulnerability?
Yeah, I've dealt with a customer like that before, where the IT guy was like very defensive and made up an excuse for every single vulnerability that we came across. Mm. And I felt really bad for the company because I couldn't, all I can do is say, hey, this is what's wrong. This is what could possibly happen. And that's my place, right? I can't go beyond that. And so I felt really bad because, we saw this vulnerability year after year, the same pen test. And I was just like, wow. So, I don't run across that scenario a lot, but that was one that I remember a lot where I had to constantly explain that, using the same local admin password across everything is bad. Opening SMB to the internet is bad, right? It's really bad. Things like that. So
TeamViewer is bad.
What duty of care do you have as a pen tester for the client to help them fix up the problems? Like, is that all mapped out in the scope of the engagement, or like what's typical for you?
I'm sorry, what was that? You said what's the
duty of care, like the
mitigation tactics.
Like how much falls back onto you for them fixing it up? Like, is that nothing?
Gotcha. I'm sorry. I think I still lost a little bit in terms of like you said, the mitigation. Like, how do we recommend?
Okay, you tell them, okay, this is what's wrong. This is how you should fix it.
Gotcha.
What is the pen tester's duty of care to see that gets
gotcha
fixed? Like, is that something you need to worry about as a pen tester, or is it just that's it from that
That's
point?
That's
it.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, happy days.
Yeah, it's
Well, it goes back to taking a case to a specialist, right? A legal case to a specialist, having him look it over, and then going to the judge and having him look it over. And so everybody's involved in the process, so nobody's responsible. With pen testers, we identify the problem. It's their infrastructure. It's their responsibility. It's their licenses. It's their patching servers. Mm-hmm. It's their data. So we give them the advice on how to fix it, and it's built into every report. To mitigate this, you need to patch to this level, specific version, or whatever. And after that, it's up to them. That goes in the report. It shows how many criticals and highs, and they have to atone for whatever through whatever compliance. And usually, I usually build into my statements of work and contracts to where I'll give them a reduced price to come back in and verify that everything's been taken care of.
Yep, I was just about to say that.
I mean, that's a natural entryway into further business.
Exactly. Yep. Remediation testing. Yep.
I think it's about removing that emotion from it, not becoming emotionally invested in the. At the end of the day, it's just a service, you know.
It's black and white. Like you have to report it like it's black and white. In the reports, I always tell like junior pen testers, never put I believe or I think. Mm-hmm. It is. If it's in black and white, it's in data. It is. Do not leave room for skepticism or, any other nonsense, because they will try to push it. They see 14,000 eternal blue vulnerabilities on their network. They're going to want to find a way to get that brush under the rug. And I've even been offered more money on a pen test to make results go away. And that's the industry. A lot of people rely on those compliances to get funding for their business or to function.
Yep. I've heard of that a lot. I haven't been offered money, but I've heard of other people being offered money, because if they were to not be PCI compliant, then they would lose this huge contract and all kinds of things just fall apart. So I've heard of that a lot.
Yeah, it happens every day. And then you get CISOs that, they have to report that pen testing report to the board, once a year. And if it looks bad, they're willing to do whatever they can to fix it. So those are the companies you want to look for to try to get business from, because they're willing to pay out the wazoo for a good run.
So is once a year a typical time frame for these pen tests, or is that
what do you run into out as far as schedule? What do you run into as far as compliance stuff goes?
Yeah, so especially for PCI, we typically see once a year pen tests. Even though we highly, especially with the product now, we push continuous, and we try to get somewhere very close so that they're not having to spend the same price 4 times or whatever, once a quarter. But I usually see once a year. I don't know if I've ever really done an assessment for a client twice in the same year, unless there's a retest for PCI or something like that within 90 days.
Yeah, with federal stuff, you'll usually do it probably once a year. With financial, sometimes it can be quarterly. It depends on the business unit you're testing. And DoD, I believe, is 1 year or maybe bi-yearly. But they have to have a third party to have to put out a RFP. So GSA contracts and scheduling is different than commercial. It just depends on the industry, really. And gaming is constant. Those guys, I know some casinos that will constantly have a revolving door for pen testing and pen test companies. They won't stick to one.
Yep.
A year seems like a very long time. Especially when I look and see how many new tools and new exploits come out every day. A year just seems like it's like a lifetime.
That goes back to one of the biggest complaints I have with return on investment, right? So nobody wants to finance their security groups within their company because they dump money into cybersecurity. They don't see any return. All they see is, well, we haven't breached, so maybe we can cut back on funding now and we'll be fine. Right. And the return on investment is when you do get breached, how bad is the breach? How long does it last?
Exactly.
But they don't see immediate return on investment. And I hope they get away from the idea. I think with SolarWinds, people may start to rethink that business model of, well, we haven't been hacked in 10 years. Why should we dump, $500,000 into cybersecurity? Well, when you look outside the window and you see the rest of the world being compromised, well, there you go. And it's really up to the pen tester too. I've been brought into companies to do a sample pen test and just to give them the shock and awe to get them sold on MSSP or, some type of, scheduled routine pen testing.
Exactly. Same here too. We do the same thing literally almost on a daily basis, showing them that value so that they can actually realize that this could potentially save them, from a pretty serious situation down the road,
And it blows my mind how many companies don't really realize the impact of a breach. A lot of people, they'll listen to you, but until you do the demo and show them how effective it is and actually give them something tangible, they don't believe it. And then when they do believe it, they're shocked and they're scared and they want to dump money. And I'm like, if you would just open your mind just a little bit and listen to what we have to say, it doesn't have to be all at once. It's going to be a gradual effect.
Exactly.
But they wait until the last minute, and usually that's way too late. Keith says a lot do pen tests for risk every quarter, internal pen tests for regulation every year for external. And that's true. It depends on government guidance and compliance. I know that the federal agencies have their own scheduling for testing and their own requirements for RFPs and bids. And in commercial world, there's really not a whole lot relying on scheduling besides PCI. But there's also disclosure for breaches. So you can schedule a pen test every quarter and save yourself some heartache when it comes to breach disclosure.
So I've got a controversial question for Alton and you, Mike. Of the vendors, platforms and products that are out there, which is has you found the most challenging in a pen test, and which, are you allowed to say this, and which has been the absolute worst? Like, what's rubbish?
Like when you're talking like a company or a technology?
Like a vendor, like say someone's got Sentinel-1 set up as their thing, or if you can't answer this question, that's okay. We can do sign language.
I can. Alan may not be able to, but I can. Meraki. I hate Meraki. I really can't stand Cisco Meraki. It's really a pain in the ass when it comes to rogue access points. And the reason why is because it does its job. And that makes things a little frustrating for a pen tester. Huh? Yeah. So that, and I really like, so I always say this in all of my talks is I don't hate Microsoft. I love Microsoft because it's kept me in business for over 20 years. So anything Microsoft, XP, I've had point of sale systems that rode on top of XP clients. I'm all for it. Like that's my favorite vulnerability is Windows.
I can totally agree with you. I'm sure Trami's tired of me saying, we
have a Slack channel, and I hear it all the time from the red team, the blue team. It's like Windows this, Windows that. Yeah.
I love Windows. They keep us in business. If it wasn't for them, we'd be broke.
Yeah, it's true.
Yep. Exactly. And that's pretty much all I can say about that.
Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely hard to sell offensive security in the market, right? Because the way I see it, it's almost like, getting your tires fixed, right? No one wants to do it until they have to. And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of the small businesses that we talk to, that's where their mindset is at. They don't understand it. So for them, it's like, they don't see the value in it until something bad happens. And at that point, it's too late, right? Some of these bigger companies with more data, I feel like they have to. But I mean, the 58 million small businesses out there, for them, cybersecurity is like the last thing on their mind, which I think it's kind of sad, but that's why I think it's so hard to be in this industry sometimes, is to sell it to others, right?
To sell it to business units is the hardest part. The bureaucracy behind it, especially when you go into like a financial institution or government, being able to sell a platform to a large corporation or somebody with that much bureaucracy, it really takes knowing somebody to get into certain spots, and especially with federal government. Like if you don't know somebody, it always goes down to who you know.
Exactly. Right. It's always who you know.
Right. Yep. And that's the way the industry is as a whole. Like, so I was, me and Steve were sitting on a award ceremony and listening to different vendors talk about what the kids could do with their lives and jobs and whatnot. And what really struck me was these relationships are started early. And it really does take knowing somebody sometimes to get a start. And it's sad that's the way that it works. But with challenges like the Matrix Challenge and having that many kids, 47,000 kids participated in Hack the Box competition for the Matrix Challenge. In the U.S., I don't know a whole lot of that goes on. That's not centered around a conference. But this is a national thing that the UK does to get people involved in cybersecurity and stuff like that. But I think if we as a community put more effort into designing stuff like that for kids and building that pipeline into, business and into startups and into that entrepreneurial mindset, we could be a leader in cybersecurity. Right now, our market's like really diluted with vendors who have been there forever. They're tied into big business. So they're not going anywhere. And really, they produce zero innovative products anymore. They just take up market space. So if we can get more people involved in the pipeline and more creative kids, I think that'll change, because people are really tired of the same snake oil and smoke and mirrors of, here I have this little box that can protect you against APT. What's in the box? Oh, I can't tell you, but I'm going to charge you $50,000 for it. Right. I think those days are over. I think that now we're hitting transparency, and kids want to know. They're curious, and I think the market and industry is going to change drastically in the next 10 years.
Yep.
So on this panel, let's see, Trammy has a degree, right?
I do. So I went to college for 4 years, and then I got my master's in 2007.
Master's. I thought that was a golf tournament. I know Cham has her degree, because I was at that graduation. Ryan is like a perpetual student. Bachelor of Arts in Music Production. Right. So I think me and Alton are probably the only ones who don't have a degree on this panel. Is me and Alton. And it's funny that we are the ones who don't have a degree. Because pen testers, there's not a whole lot of pen testers I've seen that have degrees. Like they rely on certifications because that's what the industry asks for.
Exactly.
But that's such a scam. I really wish there was some regulation body that was over certification companies, because it's become highway robbery. $10,000 to sit for a 5-day course where they teach you basically nothing that I couldn't learn out of a manual. Like that's robbery. That's robbery.
It's COVID profiteering,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to pay to play the game, right? So they want these kids to be invested. So they say, well, you need X amount of certs before we can give you a job. If you're coming out of school, tell me what student post-student loans has money to drop $10,000 on certification. It doesn't exist. And when you have people like, I was asked to write a course for EC Council, and I started writing it, and I started thinking about it, and I was like, certifications as a whole is an industry. And I can't say that I agree with the industry, because to me, it goes back to the Book of Eli, right? I don't know if you've seen the movie or whatnot, but the knowledge should be free. The knowledge should be passed down. It shouldn't be something that we sit on and go, oh, we can capitalize on this. We're going to create our own certification to teach people how to use Donald Dick and break into 20-year-old networks. Like, I remember looking at CEH version 1, and they were using tools like Donald Dick and the mail bomber, the Unabomber. I mean, that stuff has stopped years ago, but they're making certifications around it and making big money.
Right.
So what does that tell people that, getting into cybersecurity? Well, if I can pass a test, I can get a Lexus.
I think that guy that scoured the internet for the free resources and taught himself everything is worth way more than someone who's just gone and paid $15.99 for the month or whatever the courses were. But how do you show that to an employer? How do you go, I researched everything myself. I learned it. I found the resources.
What I did was I just challenged the test. And it pissed Sands off, and they tried to tell me I was cheating because I passed 5 tests in one day. And I was like, no, your tests suck. Like, they really suck. And they put $50,000
they didn't get from you, buddy.
Yeah, and it's because to challenge the test back then, this is before they had like proctored events where you could take it online. And the test, I believe, was like $300 a pop, as opposed to spending $1,500 a week for one certification. So I thought, I know this stuff. I looked at the syllabus and thought, I'll just challenge it and see what happens. I'll challenge the first one. If I pass it, I'll buy 2 more. And that 2 became multiples. And I get a phone call from Sands saying that I couldn't download my cert because they had to put me through an ethics board to make sure I didn't cheat. And I thought, this is horrible. But that's certification right now. Like, they make you go take a test. They make you go to a proctoring center, and you got to take time out of your schedule. They're not paying for it. That's a requirement to have a job. And I don't think that's fair. I think that people should be able to come to communities like this and learn and get free knowledge And if you want to secure the internet for the future, and you want to secure the internet for children and for people, why are you charging for certifications on how to secure it? It seemed like that would be like counterintuitive.
Right.
I don't know. It's just me. I could go on a rant for days about certifications. So, but anybody getting into the industry, there are certain requirements. Some of us were here before the industry was an industry. And so we kind of got grandfathered in and they feel sorry for us. But you're going to have some sort of certification. Just trust me on this. There's documentation out there. There's manuals you can download. There's study guides that will prep you for your test. And you can challenge your test on your own. There's no reason to spend 10 grand on a course unless you really just don't know the material and you can't learn it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
So anybody else? Let's see. Then how to get the appropriated learning without being scammed. Okay, that's a completely different issue. How many people on this panel have been approached on LinkedIn by somebody from a foreign country and said, what certifications do you want? Every day, at least twice a day. Hey, do you want a certification? We offer these. And I'm like, no, I don't. And, if your company was worth its weight, you wouldn't be cold calling people on LinkedIn.
Right.
Just look at the jobs that you want, do some market research, look at, people who hold those positions and talk to them. And get involved in a community like our community or whoever's community and get to know the people that hold those actual jobs.
I think that's key right there is to know what you want. Because we recently interviewed, a group of students that graduated from a cyber boot camp. And, we've interviewed some that really knew what they wanted. They're like, I'm really into the offensive side. I want to be a pen tester. So it's like, it's easier to get the resources and the mentorship that you need when you know where you want to go. And then we've got some students that are so new to cyber. They're like, well, everything seems interesting, and they don't know where they want to go yet. So I always tell them the first thing to do is like, find out what you want. Right. Mm-hmm. And then go from there. But, some of them know, and then some people don't. I didn't know what I wanted to get into until recently. So yeah, I think that's the key right there. And I think you hit the nail on the head with that comment is like, find out what you want and then reach out to that person and then figure out how they got to where they are.
So here's the question for the panel. Role models and why. Let's start with Ryan.
Role models, as in who are mine, or what do I think? I think we hear a really interesting thing, that whole niche thing, like, because I'm super new to that, like actually working in this industry. And that came back so many times. Oh, what is it that you actually want to do? And like, it's such a broad topic. Like I challenge each one of you guys in the panel to actually just help one person and say, like, make that decision. Like if so, it's such a hard thing to figure out when you first start, because there's so much stuff. What do you concentrate on? So I just started concentrating on everything until something stuck. So, but I had a little bit of help. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. So that brings up a good point for me. What about like, in the military, we have the ASVAB, right? For the US. Mm-hmm. Is there a way to easily gauge kind of where someone has an aptitude?
Well, there is, right? So when you look at like OSCP, and they set up, you have a lab environment, you have a testing schedule to go by, you have an end of testing time frame. They want to see how you operate within the offensive environment. So there's those types of tests, but there's no really like test that says, okay, you want to get into cybersecurity. Here's the different principles in cybersecurity. Let's see how you test. And maybe that might be something that might be good, give like a mixture of questions and then see where people's mindset really falls in. Because that can be a tough decision, right? If you're not geared for blue team, if they stuck me on a blue team, I would go absolutely fucking insane. Like, there's no way I could do it. So there should be something to help people gauge where they believe they should be. and give you data to prove, that's definitely the type of person you are. And I think it goes back to personality as well. I was talking to kids earlier today, and I was telling them that, it's all about psychology, right? How do you think? When you address a problem, what do you look at? And it takes a special person to be able to do the red team. It takes a special person to do blue team, and no one's better than the other. It's just you try to switch those roles with people who are wired for those specific roles, and you're going to have feral cats running around. Like there's no control after that, because I would go absolutely insane. So Alton, role model.
Yeah. Who do I look up to, or?
Yeah. Like when you look at your career, who do you model yourself after? Like what traits do you go after, and who has those traits that you're trying to model?
Yeah, I think for me, I'll try to stay humble, of course. I do like to give back too. So when people come up to me to ask questions, it's crazy because I do photography. I have a good amount of followers on Instagram. And from time to time, people reach out and be like, hey man, I know you probably won't respond to this, but how did you get started? Yeah. I always take the time to respond, always. I don't care how busy I get, because I know I was in the same shoes at one point as well. So I always want to give back, help, be humble, I just want to succeed, and I just want people around me to succeed. And, so that's kind of how I have been and how I try to stay. I don't have to try to stay that way, but that's how I am.
Yeah, gotcha. Chan, what about you? As far as role models go in cybersecurity, what traits or what person do you think has those traits that you want to model your career and your existence in cybersecurity after?
I think I could say I don't really have a role model. I follow a lot of people on LinkedIn because each and every one of them have different traits, different characteristics that I can learn from. So, they're either have their own company or they work for a company, and they're involved in a lot of things that are part of cybersecurity, and feeding free information like knowledge, hey, do this, hey, do that. It's nice stuff to pick up on. So I don't really have a role model, but I like to look at different people for different things.
Gotcha. Tremi, what about you?
So I don't have one in cybersecurity because I'm very much like Chum in that aspect. I follow so many people and I'm like a sponge. I just want to learn a little bit from everyone because I think you can learn a little bit from everyone. But I do really like Alan Watts when you mention role model. So he is a Western philosopher that introduced a lot of Buddhism and Eastern culture to Western culture. And there's a lot of talks that he gave that are just very enlightening, and they really resonate with me. Just it's just broader things like how do you find your purpose in life? How do you, what's the meaning of happiness? So I find a lot of those big questions he answers, and it helps me kind of find myself. And then from there, I just find like-minded individuals that I can kind of learn and grow with, and just surrounding myself by positive people all the time is kind of the path that I take. I always try to go with good energy. I'm a huge believer in that. So anywhere where there's positivity, good people, good vibes, sharing knowledge, and uniting. I think humans are the best when we can work together, understand our strengths and weaknesses, and understand that we don't have to know everything and it's okay. And then to learn from others. I think that's the best thing. And that's why I'm a part of this podcast, because I feel like everyone here is just so nice and open to just connecting and learning from each other. So in a sense, I feel like everyone in my life that I've gotten to know through this community and in cybersecurity, you all have been a role model at some point in my life. So
that's scary.
I don't think it's scary. I think it's great.
So my role model is Thor, because Thor carries a big band hammer.
Yes.
No, seriously. I don't know. I think that as far as role models go in the industry, I have people real people in the industry that I look up to. R-Snake, Jeremiah Grossman, Ralph Eshmandia, good friends of mine that have given me bits and pieces of knowledge as I went along, and Jason Street as well. Jason Street was really instrumental when I started speaking, and was kind of like super nervous about speaking and being on a stage or whatever. So him and Ralph really helped cultivate that and make things easier. A few tips that helped. But I think as far as, other role models go, I would have to say probably JFK as one of them, because he wasn't afraid to stand up for what he believed in. And I think that
agreed.
There's a terminology or a motto that I like to go by. It's if you don't stand for something, you fall for everything. So I think that's important for people to think about when they get into the industry, is that our industry is very ego driven, very, very ego driven, very cutthroat, very competitive, very I know more than you type deal.
I know it's hard to find friendly people in this industry.
I know, it really is.
so you have to be stoic, right? So that's one thing I've had to learn with Grace over the past couple months through a fire hose, is that, it's not always graceful to fight back, and you have to just be stoic. And I think that some of the people that showed that throughout history in the U.S. is like Abraham Lincoln and JFK and people like that faced diversity and really stuck their guns. They didn't change for anybody, and that's just the way it is. And I think that in our industry, you have to do that to make a name for yourself. Like, stick to what you believe in, research it, back it up with data, and present it, and fight for what you believe in.
Did you encode that?
What's that? Yeah. Multiple times.
Alton, can you figure out how to automate that?
I know, right?
I think it's already been automated. It was automated against us.
I found the reverse. I found wonderful people in this industry. Like, I came from the music industry where everyone's all about them. It's just sycophants and big egos everywhere. And I found the cybersecurity industry a refreshing change. Like the ratio of wankers to good people is really good. Like,
but those trolls can be a headache, man. They really can.
Yeah.
God. But yeah, I mean, and then you get people who I hate the term, and I refuse to be called this on any podcast or any conference, is a subject matter expert. So when someone uses the word expert, it's a total turnoff. If you're getting into the industry and you make it to a point where you're speaking and people look for your advice, never call yourself an expert, please. Because none of us are. New technology comes out. As we're speaking right now, I'm sure there's like 2 or 3 technologies being released that we know absolutely nothing about. So to call ourselves experts is kind of egotistical.
Agreed.
Yeah. So anything else from the people that are watching? If you want to post another question in chat, we'll address it. So Portslug says, a lot of people want to be a pen tester since it is fun and sexy. I appreciate the compliment, Portslug. Like, I didn't know you felt that way, but yeah, it happens. I'm kidding. They do. They see what they see on TV, like NCIS and and we talked about this in the thing with the kids today, is that, our jobs aren't always neon green matrix code falling from the sky. It's reporting, it's 24/7 work. It's working in 2 different time zones at the same time. Traveling, getting up at 5 a.m. to give a conference overseas. I mean, it's a lot of work. It truly is. And that's why I say, if you don't have a passion for it and you're doing it just for the money, be prepared to prepare yourself for burnout, because it takes a passion to get through some of those long hours and some of that hard work.
Very true.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
I don't have anything else. Anybody else have anything? One more question. So Colin Hardy did this thing with, I can't remember who he was interviewing, but he would say a word, and the first word that popped into mind, the person answering a question should answer it. So I got something a little different. If you were a superhero, Marvel or DC, who would it be? Alton first.
Oh, I'm so bad at this part. Oh man, I don't know. I know that's kind of lame, but
I would see you as like an Iron Man, really big into tech, nice cars.
Suave as. GitHub says it all, man.
So what about you, Trey?
So I'm a fan of the Scarlet Witch. So there's not much about her, but she's super powerful, and yeah, she's my favorite.
Cool. Champ, what about you?
I think it has to be Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman. I can see that. Ryan, what about you?
I'm DC, man. Batman. No superhero. It's just enough capital, mate. You can make anything happen. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Totally down with that. I was about to say the same thing. Batman, because he's not really a superhero. He's more like a tech wizard. And my other favorite is Deadpool, the unsuperhero.
Yes.
Yeah, he carries the big band hammer too. Totally dig that.
I woke me up at like 3 o'clock in the morning the other day to watch Deadpool because I couldn't sleep.
No.
Perfect woman.
Nice. So, Alan, do you have any questions for us? Feel free to, this is an open forum, and I mean, this is how we work. It's an open community, and we speak freely, and that's just the way it is. So if you have any questions for us, shoot away.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I have any questions. I just want to, if anybody has any questions for me, even outside of this, I just want to be available. I know sometimes, kind of asking some questions that people may seem may think some people may want to ask questions that they think are too personal, but I'm super transparent. All right. I don't have anything to hide. I don't have any knowledge that's just in the corner somewhere. So I just want to help. So, I mean, if anybody has any questions about how to get into the industry, how is it starting your own business, or what my path was even further, I mean, I'm glad to talk about that. So
how can people get a hold of you? Email address or website or Twitter? What do you prefer?
Probably Twitter. I think Twitter, probably LinkedIn. I'm more on LinkedIn. I wake up and I look at LinkedIn. I don't really look at Twitter too much nowadays. And a lot of stuff.
Nonsense.
Yeah. But LinkedIn is a good one. So I also have a personal website if you want to go to eltonj.io, cool. By Tremi. So that's basically my personal story. There's some contact information on there. I'm into photography, cars, pen
cool.
testing. So yeah.
Yeah.
eltonj.io.
Yeah. Yeah. My website kind of sucks right now, but we're working on that.
We're working on it.
So with that being said, Alden, I really appreciate you taking the time to spend your Saturday evening with us, and welcome to the haunted house finally. I'm really excited to see what happens with the product, and if you guys eventually sell or what happens. It's exciting road.
Yeah, definitely appreciate the opportunity too, and definitely stay tuned. We have some I'm full of ideas. I feel like we're just getting started with the with everything. So there's so much more stuff that I want to bring to the product. So I appreciate the opportunity.
If you need some help or you want somebody to be a sounding board, I'm sure that you can hit me up or bounce off the community. So that's what we're here for.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ethan. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you guys for tuning in today on your Saturday. I'm amazed that people show up. So thank you guys so much for coming and joining the podcast today.
See you guys next weekend.
All right. Have a great weekend, everyone.
All right, welcome back, everybody. In our Something Old segment coming up now, we have a presentation by Kaniz Mahdi, who is the Vice President of Advanced Technologies at VMware. And she talks about 5G predictions in a post-COVID-19 world. Great conversation about all of the opportunities about 5G, especially as more business applications and business models are cropping up right around 5G. Lots to know about for the industry in general. So let's give this presentation a look.
My name is Kaniz Mahdi. I am responsible for technology, vision, and direction for Telco Edge Cloud BU in VMware. I spent most of my professional life in the wireless industry. Was fortunate enough to contribute essential tech to voice over LTE systems, and drove the inception of 5G during the early days of SDN. Which brings me to the topic of today, which is 5G predictions post-COVID. So 2020 was anticipated to be a transformation, a huge transformation for the telco industry, because 2020 was going to be the year when 5G would be launched, and 5G anticipated to change the way we live, work, and play. And transformation was basically the name of the game in 2020. It did turn out to be transformational indeed, not because of 5G, but because of COVID. COVID is here with us most probably through the end of this year. It will continue to dominate the scene. However, some of the behavioral transformations that were led by COVID are here to stay for a sustainable, longer-term future. And among those, distributed workforce is by far the most impactful derivative of COVID. And we anticipate that it will forever change the way we conduct our daily business. Brick and mortar stores will continue to serve as the distributed warehouses and localized ancillaries for the retail giants. AI and bots will be there, will remain to be there. I think they will become mainstream vehicles for automating the stacking and packaging and any other needs that basically are met by human labor. Telemedicine has been talked about for many, many decades, at least in the wireless industry. But finally, it will become mainstream, thanks again to COVID. But it will be limited to routine follow-ups and whatnot until the new means of multimodal interactions using haptics and holograms become mainstream. And those technologies are a little too nascent in their life cycle at this time. And then there are entertainment reimagined, education reimagined, and I'm sure the other speakers of this forum will be talking about those transformations. So the gist of it is basically what I'm trying to get to is starting in 2021, we will see expedited 5G deployments that will be needed to stitch the pervasive connectivity fabric that is needed to enable the sustainable operation of these distributed behaviors. You must be thinking, I have a 5G phone right here in my pocket. It doesn't look or feel any different from my old phone. So what's so transformational about 5G? So you're right. The 5G phone in your pocket is not transformational at all. Let's see, take a deeper look and see how and where the transformation starts. So if you look at the previous generation of wireless and how they have evolved, I'm not going to go all the way to 1G and 2G, not relevant anymore. Starting with 3G, I don't know if how many people in the audience remember the early 3G days where we were very used to using BlackBerries. 3G was the first time that data was introduced on mobile phones. However, the user experience, if you recall, was quite clunky. All you could do was either talk or read emails. Maybe just some simple web browsing, but that was pretty much it. This is basically, I'm talking about somewhere between early 2000s to maybe 2009 timeframe, which is 2009 is basically the twilight of 3G and 4G coming up the horizon. There was a big surprise in the wireless industry, and that surprise was basically Apple iPhone launch. iPhone was basically a game changer. It changed the game completely. It gave the compute in the hands of the user. At that time, I remember very vividly, I was part of the 3GPP community working on IP multimedia system, which is basically the application layer of LTE. I have to tell you, to be very honest, the 3GPP community was completely surprised by the launch of iPhone. But I think that was the best thing that ever happened to wireless, the launch of the App Store. LTE, the inception of LTE and its launch in the industry basically benefited from the launch of the iPhone. Google Android ecosystem followed very closely. And so basically LTE was a time that data and compute started to become mainstream. So the function that was served by the telecommunications wireless system very quickly transitioned from a simple connect between two endpoints to connect, compute, and store services offered to the user through their mobile devices. However, it was not until the very late in the LTE cycle, with the rise of the hyperscale data center, that the industry and the consumer truly reaped the benefits of the universal data. And that is basically the time that we started to enjoy unthinkable services like Uber and Airbnb. And so basically what I'm trying to get to is almost every data service launched by the 3GPP community, the mass adoption of it and was driven by an over-the-top phenomena. So 3G, the surprise was the Apple App Store, and the surprise applications or the killer apps for LTE ended up being Airbnb and Uber. Taking a step forward, what came next? Up until 4G, I should say, the focus for the wireless generation evolution has been on improving human-centric experiences with order of magnitude increase in performance and bandwidth. 5G basically is a little different, and I should say quite a lot different from the previous generations. Because 5G benefits from a much richer breeding ground thanks to the recent advances in Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and robotics. 5G is the first generation of wireless that is designed from scratch to serve highly interactive collaboration between smart things. And smart things being people like us, human beings, machines, cyber physical systems, or any combination of the above. Antiquated design technologies and techniques that are prevalent in today's packet data systems, including the wireless networks, are seriously challenged by the service vectors that are expected of these machine-to-machine interactive collaborations. And for this matter, a completely new foundation was envisioned for 5G, a foundation firmly grounded in elements that sit at the intersection of wireless, cloud, and networking. And what you see here on this screen basically is a rough scorecard of the different elements of this foundation in the order of maturity. So basically, from the left-hand side of the screen, you will see the elements which are the most mature, almost out the door already, and then all the way to the end is basically things which are still in the research labs. So the current 5G deployments are mainly focusing around capacity augmentation, higher performance bandwidth, using 5G new radio extensions to the existing LTE networks. And this is the reason why you don't see much difference in how your new 5G phone is behaving from the time that you had the old the 4G phone. Kudos to the 3GPP community, the service provider ambitions to expedite the 3GPP roadmap. We have 5G in our hands, extremely good work in terms of the first three elements of the 5G foundation that you see on the screen. However, much remains to be completed when it comes to the elements that sit at the intersection of cloud, networking, and wireless. And that takes me to what VMware is doing to shape the next chapter of 5G evolution. So at VMware, we feel that with 1 foot in the service provider space and, of course, another deeper foot that we already have in the cloud space, we sit at the sweet spot to help drive the next chapter of 5G foundation. And we aim to basically use our relationships and our long credence in cloud industry, as well as the foothold that we've started to establish with our telco cloud platforms in the wireless industry. We aim to bridge these somewhat disparate industries in a way that helps to maximize the interop across the wireless, networking, and cloud, while having each of these three maintain their individual differentiation, resulting in a sustainable win-win for all. So how do we see things shaking out for the next few years? So first and foremost, we see that edge computing, and I missed a note earlier when I was walking you through the evolution toward 5G. 5G brings compute and the edge closer to the user, and this is basically driven by the latency critical needs of 5G. So, but 5G is not the only driver for edge compute. Esports and the rise of process automation resulting in elephant flows coming costly to basically shuttle these elephant flows over the long haul network. So edge compute is basically getting closer and closer to the user. we will see continued rise in the adoption of edge compute. VMware, basically, the way we see the next chapter of 5G evolution shaping out is basically through bridging the three industries, wireless, cloud, networking, in a scalable edge to cloud continuum. And that is an essential element that we see that has to be in place for anything that we do as to shape the next chapter. As 5G and edge compute comes closer to the user, this is going to give rise to machine-to-machine communications and machine automation, which in turn will result in an increased focus on IoT security. IoT security is a field of study that is a little bit on the back burner, very early in its infancy, but as IoT becomes mainstream, process automation goes deeper and deeper into mission critical applications, it becomes paramount that we fix the threats and other issues arising from connectivity coming closer to mission critical applications. And then we see that XR. So a lot of people are very excited about augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality. At this point, it's mostly a game or a passion of the techies and the gaming communities, but with COVID, things going remote, experiences going remote, as I mentioned earlier, retail, education, medicine. It will require more commercial grade, more usable UI tools, which are based and grounded in AR, VR, and XR. So AR, VR will go mainstream. People are already looking into, scientists and also some small startups are looking into non-traditional modes or mediums of interaction. And here I'm referring to holograms and haptics. Those mediums are essential for a seamless, effective means of interaction over distributed mediums. However, that those technologies are a little too early to in their infancy to be effective in mission critical applications. Then the other element of technology advancement that we are sensing is the advances in machine learning. As you look around, there is hardly any facet of our life which does not include some form of machine learning. AI and ML will continue to be ingrained in our daily lives. Bots will become more and more pervasive. You will see bots everywhere around you, be it your home, be a factory floor, be a retail store, or a hospital. And all of these behavioral transformations, interaction going remote, bots taking over most of the mundane human tasks, will require a very solid latency critical underpinning fabric. And for that, time-sensitive communications element of the 5G foundation becomes extremely critical. That is the most interesting element of the foundation, which is yet to be exposed to mainstream public. But because of COVID, inducing distributed interactions, because of COVID giving rise to the bots and the need for collaboration across different entities and different agents over distributed medium, latency becomes paramount. And although things are a little early in the labs or inside the wireless vendor factories, I think service providers will be basically looking to expedite the deployment of time-sensitive communication. So look out for the next 2 or 3 years. I think we should have some very useful, effective mediums of communication that allows us to do remote collaborations in a very effective, time-critical manner. Last but not least, we will continue to see policy and regulation playing a critical role in the definition of technology, with governments playing an even bigger role in the definition of the roadmap for next G, leading into 6G, which brings me to my last point here. VMware remains committed to reestablish the U.S. technology leadership through United States strengths in software and silicon. With this, I would like to thank the Predict event organizers for giving me a chance to share some of the thoughts on how we see the COVID resulting in behavioral transformations, and these behavior transformations in turn expediting the technology roadmap that the researchers and the tech community had imagined a long time ago for transformation of our lives, the way we live, work, and play. And I look forward to your questions and comments, and any partners that would like to come and join us in our journey towards NextG, feel free to reach out to me over LinkedIn or reach out to our community experts, and looking forward to partnering with you in shaping the next chapter of our lives. Thank you.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond. CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and Media Ops CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with the Tuesday headlines. First up on DevOps.com is an article that looks at how DevOps can be used to protect organizations against insider threats. As organizations become data-driven, embrace data democratization, and release new applications at breakneck speed, the probability of an insider threat is rising sharply. We often think of preventing insider threats as a task best suited to cybersecurity professionals, but as the lines between developers and security blur, and DevSecOps takes root in many organizations, practices such as implementing access policies as code and zero standing permissions, as well as audit trails for privileged activity, are DevOps-friendly ways to reduce the threat of insiders doing harm, either unwittingly or on purpose. Security as code and infrastructure as code have emerged as good models for implementing security solutions, and as more organizations look to make security a fundamental part of their application development process, security issues such as insider threats will be addressed as applications are being developed, not after they've been implemented. Also on DevOps is the second installment in a 3-part series on citizen development. The first installment focused on some fundamentals such as selecting the right use cases for citizen development, enabling and empowering citizen developers, and establishing citizen development guardrails that protect the organization. Part 2 of the series focuses on the key decisions for enabling and empowering citizen developers. There are many different considerations organizations need to understand when embracing and enabling citizen development, including training, support, and recognition of citizen developers. And when it comes to empowering them, organizations need to consider things such as both the application development process and the overall application lifecycle. As low-code platforms continue to evolve, the capabilities that facilitate the collaboration between the citizen developer and the pro coders are critical to deliver a successful application. As the article indicates, it is not uncommon for a pro coder to collaborate with a citizen developer to deliver the last 5% to 10% of an application's necessary functionality. As with this first installment, this article offers up some real insight into delivering business value from citizen development, and it's definitely one worth checking out. Plus, as part of our month-long spotlight on cloud native and cloud native technologies, we are featuring a discussion I recently had with 3 DevOps Institute ambassadors that ran right here on TechStrong TV. We discussed cloud native and its role in DevOps, as well as related topics, including the role of security in developing cloud native applications, and it is definitely a conversation for the books. If you have 15 minutes or so, please watch the video. If you don't have the time, just read the transcript. I'm sure there is something for everyone in this cloud native conversation. All right, over on Container Journal, we have news from in-memory computing platform provider Gigaspaces, which has added support for a Kubernetes operator that makes it easier to deploy and update its platform. The company is making available a Kubernetes operator based on the management framework originally defined by CoreOS to complement its existing support for the open source Helm tool, simplifying deployment and management of its platform on a Kubernetes cluster. While there are still many organizations employing Helm, most are starting to rely more on operators to manage their Kubernetes environments. So the Kubernetes operator is part of release 15.8 of the Gigaspaces Insight Edge portfolio, which reduces the memory footprint for the platform while simultaneously improving SQL query and business intelligence performance. All right, over on Security Boulevard, we have an article about mitigating third-party supply chain breaches. That makes a whole lot more sense. It's a hot topic since SolarWinds, but unfortunately it's not a new threat. That said, it's become increasingly attractive for cyber criminals to exploit trusted conduits into the enterprise that are established through third-party supply chain relationships. These types of attacks provide under-the-radar access to key infrastructure and resources at the heart of any enterprise, including applications and software tools. And they're so pervasive and effective that they pose a risk to the company and the economy at a macro global scale. So what can an organization do? Well, for one, they can consider using secure enclave technology. Isolating every application and its data within an enclave is key to minimizing the impact of a software-based supply chain attack. Enclave technologies are being adopted by all industry players throughout the industry, including major cloud providers. Nobody wants to be the next SolarWinds, but that type of attack looms large on the horizon. Enclaves are becoming a practical way to help mitigate future supply chain breaches. And finally, we have an article that looks at how organizations can secure their cloud investment. Cloud adoption was already a safe bet in 2020, but the pandemic drove a rapid acceleration of this trend last year. Enterprises' average cloud spend went up 59% from 2018, according to IDG. But according to ISC2, 1 in 4 organizations confirmed a cloud security incident in the last 12 months. That shows the need for all businesses to have an effective cloud security strategy in place. As businesses ramp up cloud initiatives and accelerate their digital transformation, The importance of keeping data safe, customer and employee privacy intact, and meeting necessary compliance requirements cannot be overstated. Many businesses have already discovered that legacy security tools are not cloud compatible, so a good understanding of cloud security is critical to properly support the cloud-based solutions that they've invested in. Taking a security-first approach to cloud services, securing endpoints, and other tips are covered in this article. And it's a useful reminder for organizations using the cloud that security should be a top consideration. All right, that's it for the headlines today. Please check back with me on Thursday when I will have a fresh new batch for you. Until then, have a great day, everybody, and please stay safe.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here once again with Chris Hickman, who's the Chief Security Officer at Keyfactor. Chris, thanks for joining me once again on TechStrong TV. So glad to see you.
Oh, Charlene, thank you very much for inviting me back. Great to see you again today.
Great. Well, let's talk about managing SSH keys in these multi-cloud environments, because obviously with the pandemic and everybody working in remote environments and the adoption of cloud services, SSH is a great authentication tool, but in these new multi-cloud environments, I can imagine that it gets pretty chaotic. And so there is the greater opportunity for these private keys to kind of get lost and possibly open themselves up for vulnerability. And so hoping that you and I could have a discussion around ways that organizations can help kind of protect those SSH keys and kind of keep SSH as that kind of, really great authentication method that it is today.
Yeah, and it's funny because SSH keys, their strengths are also their weakness to a certain degree. By virtue of the fact that they are decentralized, makes them very good for managing things remotely. However, as a result of being decentralized, they're often unmanaged as well, which exposes organizations to risk and potential threat.
So have you guys seen an increase in these SSH keys kind of being compromised because they were either lost or misplaced or just kind of forgotten about?
So we've seen an increase in attacks that are taking advantage of SSH protocol more than the specific keys. However, we've also seen some sort of attacks against the keys where they're password protected and brute force type attacks and things like that. It's been right across the board, and so as a result, we're really helping people right now sort of identify some of these weaknesses that they have as a result of the fact that people are trying to do what they can to manage cloud assets and things of the sort. For us, we've seen an increased awareness of the potential risk around SSH keys, the awareness of the proliferation of these keys and the increased use of them. And therefore, organizations are starting to stand up and take note and say, okay, this is something we have to kind of get our arms around and try to get the proverbial horses back in the barn.
Right. Okay. So do you think that a lot of organizations just kind of don't understand the impact that these keys could have on laying open the organization to data breaches, or is it more that it's just kind of like too chaotic an environment for them to manage effectively? And why do you think that this has become kind of the big issue that it has become?
I think it's become a big issue because so if we sort of take a step back and look at where SSH keys, if you will, came from, I mean, they were a very effective way to manage resources remotely. And remotely was traditionally, of course, I'm sitting in an office and I need to manage a router in a data center or a Linux box here or, so on and so forth. And it was a smaller group of administrators that would create these key pairs. And it would be a very concise list of people who sort of knew what to do with them and how to use them. Along comes cloud, moving workloads to the cloud. The number of people who are trying to manage applications, devices, so on and so forth become more. And as I said, the strength of SSH keys is that they're easy to use, they're user generated, they're decentralized. They're quick to spin up. The downside is all of those things as well, right? There is no policy, there is no real procedure, and people just sort of tend to generate them as they're needed. And as a result, you end up with hundreds, if not thousands, of SSH keys on a single server where you may only have a limited number of administrators. It's opening up the potential for that server to be compromised at some future date.
So what's the obvious solution here? I mean, do we not spin up so many SSH keys, or is there a way to maybe deprecate them or just get rid of them altogether after a certain time period? Or, what's the solution here?
So the solution is to manage these keys. And one of the interesting things about SSH keys is, unlike, for instance, PKI keys, they don't expire. SSH keys don't expire. So once you've created a key pair, it's good forever. And they're generally not attached to other types of accounts. So, in a more centralized, let's say, Active Directory setting where I can, disable the account, and therefore I disable maybe roles and responsibilities and access, the SSH keys are really sort of this credential that just lives on, detached from other types of credentials. So the important thing is to be able to manage these credentials through that layer of policy, through that layer of centralization, and still obviously allow the folks in your organization to be effective in the day-to-day administration tasks that they need to do. So, there's an increased lens, if you will, on the problem, and the lens looks to allowing decentralized assets, but bringing management into them. So finding where they are in the organization, finding out if they're still needed. There are in a large organization millions of SSH keys that are not needed, identifying what those are, and then really being able to say, okay, you know what, let me either restart my strategy under management, or let me get my strategy cohesive with the keys so that I don't impact the organization.
So when we're talking about organizations as they undergo their digital transformation efforts, or just look to kind of maybe not do full-on digital transformation, but maybe move to a multi-cloud environment or move to a hybrid cloud environment or something like that, are there any considerations that they need to keep in mind when regarding SSH when they're kind of maybe evolving their environments or undergoing that digital transformation?
I think that probably the biggest thing that people can benefit from is look at what type of access you need to give, right? And it kind of comes down to the least privilege model, which a lot of organizations are trying to adopt. Disable root access. A lot of people end up getting root access that really don't need it to all of these devices out of simplicity, right? I need to do this. Okay, administrative task, I'll give you full administrative access. Look at that. If that's not required, it should not be granted. The other parts and pieces of it really are: have a strategy to rotate keys, have a strategy to disable keys. If the protocol itself and SSH keys don't expire, find ways to expire them, and that all comes down to that management layer. And then set policy around them. Obviously, in other areas of the business, there's a lot of policies around cryptographic assets in general. SSH keys should be no different. They should have their own set of policies, their own set of procedures that are proper for your organization and implemented in a cohesive and seamless way across the organization.
All right. Well, bringing chaos to SSH keys. I hope that one day we'll get to a point where this is no longer an issue. But I have a feeling that with the amount of remote work that's been happening and the multi-cloud environments and digital transformation, we're going to be hearing a lot more about SSH keys and the vulnerabilities that they bring to IT environments. Unfortunately, but that's just always a good excuse to have you back on TechStrong TV, Chris. So, but thank you so much for your information today. Your expertise, as always, is much appreciated.
Thank you very much for having me once again. I look forward to coming back.
All right, great. All right, everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so stay tuned.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community, digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I am here now with LaChristian Taylor, who is the head of executive operations in the CEO office at Exabeam. LaChristian, thank you so much for taking the time and talking with me today. I really do appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, Charlene. So excited.
What do you do as head of executive operations?
Well, I pretty much do everything. No, I'm just kidding. I actually kind of just wrangle in our exec staff. I started at Exabeam as an executive assistant, and in that role, you're supporting at the highest level. And so for me, it was I wanted to kind of just give back and show support from behind the scenes. And so that's basically what I do in my daily operations at Exabeam is kind of wrangle our executives, make sure we're all on set. It also includes scheduling, maintaining calendars, all that good stuff before COVID, booking, travel, and all that good stuff. So it really is a role that wears many different hats.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. Well, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about diversity and inclusion in cybersecurity and the IT space in general, because it's an important topic, and I know that organizations are putting more thought into diversity and inclusion, and it's gotten a lot better. I can tell you from being in the IT space for about at least. God, I don't really want to say how long it's been, but it's been at least 25 years, I'll say. Mm-hmm. A lot has changed, and a lot has changed for the better. But there are still certain areas where, that we could use some improvement. And that's, I think actually that's pretty much everywhere, but in the IT space, I think we've made great strides, especially when it comes to inclusion of people of color and people from different nationalities and, you name it, basically. I think, the one thing that I have noticed about the IT industry is the fact that despite the fact that for a very long time, it's been, your basic, white male dominated they're very, very open to people of different genders, different nationalities, different races, different orientations. And that's one of the things I think that really makes the IT sector in general so very strong. And so that's my perspective. I'm wondering if I could get your perspective, what you think.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I totally agree with you in that. I do think that, with everything that has happened over the last year, it's important to state that, social unrest has gone on way before last summer. It's not that the protests have just come about. And I think that's one thing that people do need to focus on at the start, because it starts with self-awareness. Yes, George Floyd, yes, Breonna Taylor really woke people up. But I mean, we can go back to 2012, Trayvon Martin. We can go back to 2014, Eric Gardner. We can go back to when, before I was born with Emmett Till in 1955. These protests, this type of social unrest is not new. And ironically, you say technology kind of is is open to it. But it was technology that brought it to the forefront, technology, camera phones. That in itself is what is skyrocketing this. We're getting real live, feedback on what's really going on in the world. So with these instances going on, it's to shed light on that and talk about that and talk about the reality of the numbers, the stats, where they come from. It's such an ugly reality. But like you said, I've definitely seen a huge push in the last, at least the last year. I know, especially with my company at Exabeam, our CEO has taken a full-fledged, stand. Obviously, he has a Black executive assistant. I mean, he has no way but to support where this is going. But I think it's really brought an awakening to the tech world, but not just but as well as the corporate world. I don't know if you've noticed. For me, LinkedIn. That for me has been sort of a place where it's just been completely just titles, jobs, things like that. And now it's you see, folks talking about social justice and providing, people of color with opportunities and things like that. So it's very visible on what the effects that last summer had. But I do also want to stress that, this has been going on for such a long time. And because of technology, I really feel that it's been brought to the forefront.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. And I think that definitely technology has also kind of fomented this continuation of the conversation, if you will. Before we would have, there would be incidents and it would be all over the news for about 2 weeks and then it would go away and you wouldn't hear about it. Now people are actually taking a stand, and companies are taking a stand now. I think, it's been kind of a political pendulum swing. We went so far to the right that folks felt like they had to stand up and say their, what they really felt and basically show the rest of the world that, we're not all bigots and racists and now I think because we were all so enraged at what was going on with our society, not just the way that the world was looking at us from all the nonsense that was happening beyond what was happening with Trayvon Martin and the Black Lives Matter movement and it just our entire reputation to the world was at stake. But on a much more personal level, we were enraged at what was happening to our fellow Americans, our fellow citizens, and
brothers and sisters.
We just had enough. Yeah. So now I think was that pivotal moment when we stood up and said, you know what, I don't care if I lose customers, or I don't care if you don't like me as a person anymore because of my, the way that I view the world, but I'm going to take the stand. I'm going to say what I want. And this is how I feel. And I don't, this is more, this is bigger than me as a person. This is a societal thing and it needs to change.
You're spot on too, Charlene, because when you were saying that, people don't care about, not they don't care about their customers, but what they feel matters more. And it brought me chills because, I always say, and I stress this, Black Lives Matter, social unrest, it's not just a hashtag, Don't get me wrong, tech companies have always had, their little badge of honor, their little, space and saying, we have this for, inclusion here and there, but that's it. And it stopped there. The buck stopped there. And then, in the same breath, because of everything that's been going on, companies they're looking at it like, I don't care. This is happening to my executive assistant. She's feeling some type of way because of what's going on. She supports me at the highest level in everything. So, I don't know if, you guys heard about the CEO at Expensify. We had gotten an email like the day before elections, and he was just kind of just spilling out his whole, like how he felt, and it really, that I think that point really put me at another level because it was a company that had, millions of customers, and he didn't care. He didn't tell anybody who was sending this out. It was just what was on his heart. Mm-hmm. And, I think, like I said, technology is bringing it to the forefront, but it's so important to realize as well that, this is not just a hashtag. Your fellow coworkers, they deal with this every day of their life, and so I think that it's really starting to sink in with, other coworkers. I mean, I've had coworkers myself reach out to me. Never in my life did I think my boss, the CEO of a company, would reach out to me during the riots and say, hey, I can't, I can't really say I understand, but I want you to know I'm here for you. And I want to support you. I mean, I literally broke down in tears, Charlene, because as a Black woman, you never would think that somebody would care, especially at the highest level. Mm-hmm. And so, that's one thing that I'm stressing at Exabeam is having those conversations that are difficult, having my boss say, that must have been so difficult for him, to reach down and say, I feel this type of way. So, having other companies, making sure this is not just a hashtag is going to drive this mission.
So what are you guys doing to kind of make sure that it isn't like a one-off conversation? Are you guys doing anything from a corporate level to really further this idea and this movement, if you will?
Yeah. So we actually, like I said, we've always talked about diversity and inclusion. It's always been an issue. Our HR department was, already handling programs. We're a startup. Well, not a startup anymore. Yeah. I was there when we were a startup. But it's always been at the forefront. But with, last summer, everything that was going on, I think it really sort of skyrocketed everything. Mm-hmm. And so, I will stress that it does start with leadership. Nothing is going to change unless you have your stakeholders at the top and it trickles down at the bottom. So specifically for Exabeam, we've started what we call the community council. And it's basically, I spoke earlier about our CEO, but we basically provide a platform which is aimed to kind of bring a voice to those who feel underrepresented, educate, raise awareness. We're currently, our launch is February 18th. I'm actually our lead.
All right.
Yeah, my boss like, you got it, Elsie. And it's something that's extremely close to my heart. I mean, and he saw that. And so we've got different like subcommittees and things like that, mentorship program. There's times where, people within your tech company may not necessarily feel okay talking to their manager about something. But if they feel that they're surrounded in a safe space, they're more apt to, hey, ask for help, or how do I speak to this executive, or how do I present? And so these are the type of programs that we're launching within our council, kind of bring that to the forefront at our company. We also have our Exagals program as well. It's a program aimed to empower women, Exabeamers, employees, as well as women across the tech space. So we've got a lot of programs that are in the works. Super excited about our community council. I tell everybody, our CEO, he's our executive sponsor, and he is at every meeting. He has no choice because I run his calendar. So he is at every single thing. And, I've got the inside track, which is really beneficial. So I do implore, companies who are looking to start a D&I initiative, please make sure you start at the top. Talk to your leadership and, involve people of color. How can things be changed if you don't have anybody of color sitting at the table? You can't make a decision for me based on a full,
true that,
boardroom full of white males. That makes absolutely no sense. You can't make decisions based on that. Like, just like a man, I don't think men can make decisions on me because I cannot, connect with that. So I do implore that starting from the top is the number one thing that's going to change. And getting those key stakeholders involved, that's really gonna make a difference. And, ultimately, what we're doing at Exabeam is, our aim is to just set an example for the cybersecurity industry. It's such a the industry is growing massively.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I started 4 years ago, I'm like, what's cybersecurity? What's that? And like everyone would tell me, LC, oh my gosh, you're in cybersecurity. That is like a pop-in industry. It's booming. And I'm like, oh, okay, but what we want to do, we're a small company, but we want to, set an example. We want to inspire others to be more inclusive, to provide more opportunities for people of color. I always say that, when you give people opportunities, studies show, your team can excel with a diverse team, and so, providing those opportunities for people of color, it's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%. And I applaud Exabeam for taking the step and really, giving it more than lip service. I think that's a great thing. And I wish you guys the best. And it was a pleasure talking to you, LaChristian. I hope we can have further conversations.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. Right. I definitely do enjoy it for sure. Please feel free to reach out.
All right. Great. All right, everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so stay tuned. All right, welcome back. Next up, we've got Mitch Ashley's Analyst Corner when he talks about business transformation, what it really means, and what are the 3 stages of value that companies need to consider in making their initiatives a reality, and what comes up after digital transformation starts. So let's give this conversation a listen.
Welcome to Analyst Corner. Mitch Ashley, CEO with Accelerated Strategies Group. In transition, when things are being disrupted, and of course, it can be because of a new innovation in the market, new technology. It can be, of course, the situation we're in some ways with the pandemic and economic impact of that. A lot of innovation occurs. And sometimes that innovation is incremental, and sometimes that innovation is revolutionary. It can be too soon, too early. It can be at the right time. Of course, timing is everything, right? And it reminds me of kind of the phase that we're in now, where digital transformation is occurring. How do we move to a digital interaction with our customer and all that we do, or with our suppliers, our business partners, our employees? Really, we're looking at all aspects, right? And I don't think anybody's assuming everything will be back to in person, or maybe even a substantial proportion of it. We may have large proportions that will always stay digital, because once you change the behaviors, the habits, the way you deliver services, the way you interact with customers, those things tend to stick, especially people like it, of course. And think about that too, just in the world of as an analyst company and how we deliver our content. One of the things we've differentiated ourselves within the Accelerated Strategies Group is, I don't know about you, I don't read those 80-page analyst reports, right? Some people do. All that data in there, of course, is interesting and useful to someone. For most IT organizations, they look for the graph, the quadrant, the wave, the whatever that says I'm making a reasonable decision. I'm not putting the company at risk. Somebody agrees with me that says this is a worthwhile company. Maybe a quote or two. And that's it. I mean, they don't really read a lot of that content unless it's something that's, more compelling and interesting. And so in the approach we took with Accelerated Strategies is almost more of a, I don't want to say infographic, because that kind of lowers the fidelity of what we have, but much more of a visual presentation of content, a lot less reading. I know we all still read things, but it seems like we read things less and less. And you have very little time to get the attention of people and to communicate value. So you got to do it right up front, quickly, and make it easy, low barrier to entry. And we do that with the graphical presentation. But even that, that is just a stepping stone, in my view, of how we might consume information, whether it's from an analyst firm, from research, information about the market, even products and services, and some things that I'm looking at of where we go to next and what's incremental and what may be revolutionary. So I'm always on the lookout for someone who's got an interesting take, and then is it the right timing to consider that? Is it something people will actually use and consume? Because shiny new objects are just shiny objects. They are attention getters and time wasters, unless they really are something you can go after. And so you can't go after the next great idea that isn't really a useful idea. That's what you have to filter out pretty quickly. And you have to have some reasonable criteria of what you're looking for. Mine is always for this interaction, digital interactions, is will people do it? Will they come back to it? Do they see value in it? Or do they have to do it just because that's the way you do it? And that they don't have any other choice. In this interactive digital world, they do have choices. That's part of the challenge, is it's not only more competitive, there are a lot more choices. And if working with you is, someone was describing it as, if it's like every time I interact with this company, it feels like I'm, picking up the trash because there's some issue, right, with their application or their interface or how they do business. Feels like I'm picking up the Big Mac container one time. The next time I'm collecting the soda can or cup. Next time I'm picking up the trash bag. It's like, okay, after a while, I just that's not why I'm here. I'm here to get some value out of it. So I'm always interested in, kind of back to what I'm talking about, interested in how we consume information and what is compelling and what is valuable and repeatable. So as you're thinking about digital transformation, a thing I would encourage all of us to do is think in 3 steps. There are things that are very much now incremental. I need to automate this. I need to get this out in a format, in a way, in a process, in a delivery mode that's more compatible with the market, makes me more efficient, maybe improves the customer experience. That's the next phase, is really what is it that is going to either meet or exceed the customer's expectations and how they interact with you. And can you differentiate yourself, which is that third step, right? This now is a huge differentiator for you and how you interact in the market, how you deliver your service, how customers interact with you, what they get from you in the form, in the function, the value. So digital transformation isn't a one-step thing. Here's our plan and we'll be all automated in 2 years. It's much more long-term than that, and a much more fluid and changing type of activity. It's what's the adage? Every plan is wrong once it's published, because every plan needs to change. You can't predict the future. It's just the way it is. And if you get it half right when you do your first plan, you're doing pretty good. But you have to take that second half to adjust it and respond to learnings from what you do, as well as conditions in the market, the technology, whatever it might be, and being smart about how you apply those lessons. So interesting journey that we're on. If you have any suggestions and ideas on how we consume information and how to make that either more frictionless, more valuable, getting to the content, getting to the valuable things more quickly, that's always of interest to me. So I appreciate the folks that always reach out to me with interesting and compelling ideas. Something I'm very interested in, and how we help our customers. So wish you the best. Have a great day. Be safe and be well out there.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
All right, welcome back. In our final segment for today, we have The View from Vizard, where Mike Vizard talks to Strata CEO Eric Olden. They talk about identity management and the recent funding that Strata got. I think it's $11 million, how it's going to change the company's posture in the identity management landscape. So let's give it a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Eric Olden, the CEO for Strata. They are a player in the identity space. They just landed $11 million in financing. Eric, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So now that you got everybody a cup of coffee and a beer for the funding, what's the plan? What are you guys going to invest in? What are you thinking needs to be done next?
Yeah, we're really enjoying the start of the year. We've got a mission to create the first identity orchestration platform, and we're going after the multi-cloud world. So solving the problem of identity and access that enterprises have when they run their applications distributed across multiple cloud platforms. We raised this Series A to help scale the engineering on the product side, as well as get our first go-to-market foundation in place as well.
What is the orchestration challenge exactly? What's the problem?
Well, the problem is nowadays that if you talk to pretty much any large enterprise, and you'll find that they're definitely going to the cloud. That's not the question. The question now is, which clouds are you going to? And we're seeing that on average, 3 clouds are the average. We've seen as many as 7 public clouds. And each time that you move to these cloud platforms, it creates a new silo of identity, which means how do you manage the humans or people that are accessing the applications and data on that cloud? So each one of these new cloud platforms creates a new silo. And that's because each cloud platform comes with it a built-in identity system. So as you get more cloud platforms, you have more things you need to manage. And because we're dealing with identity, these are really the crown jewels, how people access sensitive applications and data. So the challenge is really, how do we do this in a consistent way when all of these systems are running in separated, distributed, non-compatible identity systems? So Strata isn't replacing identity systems like Okta or Azure Active Directory. What we're doing is we're making them work together so that you can orchestrate your identities and your policies consistently through these different identity systems and the identity systems built into the cloud, which is why we call it identity orchestration. And it's really, we think, the way to solve identity in this distributed multi-cloud world.
And identity today, that isn't just about people, right? You're also talking about, I would assume, applications and the microservices and maybe even the individual infrastructure. How far do we take identity?
Yeah, great question. The way that we think about identity is on 2 axes. The first one is the east and west axis. So for instance, how do you manage identity for users across Okta and Azure Active Directory and Amazon and Google and VMware, right? So you've got the same thing across multiple platforms. The second axis is on the north-south axis, which is that you've got your application tier, then you've got your platform as a service tier where your microservices and your APIs are the thing that you need to think about. And then you've got your infrastructure as a service, your IaaS tier underneath that, where you're concerned with how your compute resources and your storage and your infrastructure is configured. So identity is both east and west and north and south. So it's really everywhere, it's pervasive. And I think the ultimate goal that customers are looking to accomplish is what's called zero trust architecture. And zero trust is a a new way of describing a highly distributed environment where you can't trust or rely on the fact that you're behind a firewall, but instead you have to assume if you're running out on the public internet across all of these different cloud platforms, that you're going to have a hostile network. And so the way that you think about identity, it becomes the new perimeter, because identities and the users and the applications are now out there instead of being inside a firewall. So it's really a very broad market that we're going after, and huge challenges and real revolutionary approach to think about these in a distributed way, as opposed to the approaches in the past, which was, hey, let's put everything in one big system. Our approach is, you got to think about it, it's all decentralized. So don't try and bring it all together, but manage it where it is, which is in these different systems, both on the east-west and the north-south axis.
Do you think that this whole notion of perimeters and castles and moats is pretty much bygone? I mean, it just doesn't seem to be working.
You know, we spend most of our time with the big Fortune 500 enterprises. And I think there's for the foreseeable future, there's going to be probably more than 75% of applications and data still resides behind the firewall, right? So the castle and the moat isn't completely empty today. It's going there, but today you have a lot of stress between managing how you do things on premises and how you do things in the cloud. So we're really helping enterprises make that transition to the cloud, but enabling them to extend the existing investments that they have on premises and really making the old and the new work together.
Do you think this whole shift towards identity is part of this whole DevSecOps movement? Who's going to drive this? Is it the developer or is it the security team? And what's the relationship between the two going forward?
Yeah, DevSecOps is a huge driver in our business and our day-to-day existence. And it's been coming for some time now, where we've seen more and more shops roll into what they call either infrastructure as code or identity as code. And, you know, so we've got the kind of move to put everything behind APIs so that you can automate these things and roll out capabilities like continual integration and continual deployment. So as you look at the DevSecOps world, you have a very kind of dynamic API-driven experience. And that's very aligned with Strata's software architecture. So what we've done is we've taken identity and we've made it work for this new identity or infrastructure as code model. So to that end, we've basically wrapped all of the complexity of identity around a very declarative model, so that if you're familiar with how Kubernetes or how Terraform works, right, you have intent-based configuration. You say, this is what I want to have happen. And then Kubernetes or other software carries it out. Well, Strata has done that with the identity layer. And we think that that's going to be a huge game changer as more shops move into this DevSecOps world. They're going to need something that works with their tool chain and their processes. And that's a big part of what we've done with our software.
Okay. Do you think compliance issues are going to force this identity conversation more aggressively than they have in the past? We see a lot of focus now on privacy, and will that kind of converge to the point where I feel like we've been talking about identity for a long time now, and maybe it becomes more front and center?
Yeah, I think it is. I've been in identity since my first company I started back in 1995. We didn't call it identity management in the mid-90s. We called it web security, but it evolved pretty quickly once people realized that we weren't talking about firewalls and things like that, but we were talking about the whole issue of identity and users and applications and access. So as we've seen compliance evolve over the last 20 years, driven by, it seems like every couple of years you've got a new regulation or mandate that you need to meet. And while the song changes, the theme remains the same, which is how do you control access and how do you demonstrate that you have those controls in place? And the kind of intersection between identity and compliance really comes around auditing. And I don't think that's going to be less of an issue in the future. I think it's going to be even bigger issue, especially as we see more and more organizations become multinational because they have a customer base that lives in different places around the world. So often American companies may not think that they're subject to EU privacy controls, but they find that they are. And so all of a sudden you've got a whole bigger problem around compliance than a lot of people think about initially. So yeah, compliance is here to stay. It's becoming more complex, but the answer to it ultimately is going to be identity.
You have been around for some time, and let's talk about SAML here, Secure Access Markup Language. Is that gone mainstream? Is it gone as far as we thought it might initially? Where are we in the proverbial SAML journey?
Yeah, when we started SAML, and I was one of the co-authors of the early SAML standard, and what we were solving back in the early 2000 timeframe was how do we build a trust system that will allow identity and access to traverse different organizations. So there's really the foundation is about the trust model, and we accomplished that through the use of PKI and digital certificates, so that you have that strong underpinning that that the session or the user identity has not been tampered with or isn't coming from an untrusted provider. So we built on that foundation with successive iterations of SAML to where it's at today with SAML 2.0. And SAML, from an adoption standpoint, has really become the gold standard in identity management. And pretty much at this point, if you're thinking about any cloud, they run SAML. If you're thinking about any major SaaS application, they accept SAML. So it's really pretty much ubiquitous. That said, it's not solving the problems of how do you manage the policy of how people and what people can access. And we think that's the next challenge, is how do we think about access and policy in a standardized way? So really encouraged by the rate of adoption that SAML has had, but we think that there's more work to do around policy management.
Yeah. So what's your best advice to DevOps shops and security people at this juncture? What should they be thinking about to get started? How do I kind of get the ball rolling?
Yeah, advice today around best practices of moving to multi-cloud and thinking through identity. You want to do a couple of key things. One, you want to understand the applications and the data that you're going to be moving. If you're putting it out on the public internet on a public cloud, then you want to make sure you have a game plan for how you're going to secure access to that application and the data. And as you think about that game plan, you want to think of the policies that you're going to enforce, and also the way that you're going to manage the reporting, that you have those controls in place, so that when you have a compliance request or an audit request, that you can easily show to the auditors, here are the controls and here's how we are enforcing them. The next thing is to do this incrementally. What we've seen in the past are big bang, all-in-one migrations generally fail. That's way too risky. And instead, you should be thinking about doing things in an incremental fashion. So we advise our customers, think about it in batches. Start with some low-hanging fruit to get that experience of how do you lift and shift your applications over into the cloud. And then how do you integrate those with the identity systems? Because you're going to have to unplug from one and plug into a new one. So make it easier on yourself by doing it in an incremental fashion, that you get some quick wins and you make sure that you really have an operational playbook to do that at scale. And then once you've got the first batch over, then you start moving them in wholesale, and you can accelerate your cloud migration in that regard. And then the last bit of advice I'd say is think of the architectures that you're looking to move towards. So when you have a migration or you're adopting a new platform, this is a good time to think about refactoring your architecture. And do you want to lift and shift and move your existing apps to the cloud, or do you want to build net new applications that are cloud native? And depending on the answer to that, if you've got the budget and the technical expertise, this might be a great time to build a brand new cloud native application and leave all of the headache and avoid moving your mess, right? So the downside of lift and shift is often that you're moving a problem from one place to another. So really think through, do you want to move a problem, or do you want to fix the problem by re-architecting it to be cloud native?
Okay. Hey, so I should expect to have multiple personalities and be somewhat schizophrenic in the age of the cloud, and I should learn how to orchestrate that and cope with it, right?
Yeah, that's true. I think the way that people are, we're users like you and I day to day, when we access an application or you work with a brand, right? Whether it's your bank, your insurance company, your airline, you want that experience to treat you as Mike consistently, rather than, fragmented, or heaven's sakes, not have 5 passwords for 5 applications, right? And I think in this day and age, if you don't think about the user experience as you're rolling out your apps, it's going to be very hard to get the kind of user experience that people expect today. So, from an end user standpoint, I think it's absolutely reasonable to expect that you have a seamless experience for the user. And I think you also need to have confidence that you're not forced to use a password, but that you can use your mobile phone and, like things like Face ID or fingerprint scanner. So things that make the trust and confidence in your user identity stronger, because you've got these better protections. I think you should be asking your providers for things like passwordless authentication, because it's going to protect you and protect the bank or the service provider, because it'll go a long way to getting out of password theft and identity theft online, which is a huge problem. And then the last thing is, I think it's reasonable for us as end users to know if our data is being shared, and to understand what is the data privacy that my service provider is extending. If I have an account and a login with one provider, how do I know that my data isn't being shared without my consent? And so I think service providers should be on notice that that's a reasonable expectation, that an end user can say, look, bank, are you sharing my data when I log into this site with other sites that I may not know about? And I think that's something that I hope to see in the industry, that we've addressed sooner rather than later.
Great. Hey, Eric, thanks for being on the show.
Appreciate it, Mike. Thanks for the great questions.
All right, guys, back to you in the studio.
Hiring great DevOps and cyber talent is a huge challenge for technical teams. Cloud transformation is driving demand higher. You've tried doing it yourself. Job boards, LinkedIn, didn't work. Recruiters are an option, but who do you trust and not waste your time and money? RecruitOps is the new way to source engineering talent. From MediaOps, the people behind DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, Container Journal, and more. We sit right in the middle of the hottest positions in Dev, Sec, and Ops, and the brightest minds in the field. If you're looking for a great position or the talent to fill it, we can help you. Trust us, risk-free.
All right, that is today's TechStrong TV broadcast. Wraps it up for you. I hope everybody enjoyed today's presentations. We have a great lineup set for Thursday's presentation, our Thursday's broadcast. I hope everybody can join me then. Until then, I hope everybody has a great day, a great evening, and please, whatever you do, stay safe.